Hey, family. Hey. I'm trying to make sure my camera is not focusing well. Okay. All right. All right. What's going on with your family? What's going on? What's going on? Let's get the people in the house Let's go on. What's going on? Family. Tell me if you can hear me, if you can hear me in the house today. Yes or no? Yes or no? I got two people in here. Come on, share, like, subscribe, everything. I need to see the family. I only see two people in here. What's going on? What's going on with the fam? Why am I only seeing two people? Come on, y'all. Come on in the room. Come on in the room. Let me see. Let me see. Hold on. Who I got up in here? Can they see me in here? Come on. Hold on a second. Hold on. What's going on? What's going on, family? Who do I have in the house? For some reason, my account is. Let me go to my Sister E account. I'm not seeing people. Come on in the room, saints. Come on in the room. Who do I have? Who do I have? Shalom, shalom. All of the above. I hope everybody getting these notifications because I ain't been out here in a long time. Come on, people. Come on in the house. All right. So I'm gonna have a good conversation with my brother Ron Shields. So y'all come on in here. Thank you, Ruhama. I'm gonna get my brother Ron Shields in here, y'all. In just a second. I'm trying to get these numbers up. I need a minimum of 25 people. Come on in the house. Come on in the house, people. And Sister E trying to get back to work. Get back to work. Let me fix my little forehead. For folks be talking about Sister E forehead. Y'all see I didn't change my hairstyle again. So y'all know I'm real big about that. What's going on? I need 25 in the house. I need 25. I need 25. Come on in here, people. Who do I have? It is 11 o'clock at night. So come on in here, family. Let's see. Who do I have? Family? What's going on? Reubenite. Let's see. Yo, shalom, salama, all of the above. Let's get them in the house. Let's get these numbers up, family. We got to make sure these notifications go. I got to make sure the notifications going out because I know it's been a minute since I've been out here. So before I bring my brother in here, 25. We're at 25. Now let me find my link and I'm going to send it right on to Ron Shields. Let me get and send the link to him and we can get started. I know y'all miss me. I missed y'all too. I'm back. I needed that little break. I needed that little rest. And I'm not done with my rest yet, y'all. Oh, hold on. I'm trying to get this little link to him. Let me see. Copy. Let me send him this link. All right. Hello. We getting these numbers up. Come on in here, y'all. Come on in the room. I know it's been a minute. Has it been that long? What's going on, Robert? Haynes. I hope I'm saying it right. John, AJ. Where my folks at? Angela Love, Ernest Higgs, Jessica Figures, Lynn, Yahabin. Okay, I'm gonna say that. Mataya. What's going on with you? Eric Whitelow, Ruhama. Who do we have? Darnell Black Shear. Come on, we got 28 people. Let's get these numbers up. What's going on? Marcus, what's up? Kendrick, what's up? I know a Kendrick I used to hang out with when I was living in Memphis, long time ago in my teenage years. Ava, yeah, what is it? Bonsoir. I think I'm saying it right. Uh, let me see. Bonjour. Why did I say bonjour? I'm tired, y'all. Pray for me. What's going on? What's going on? Stephen Orion TV. What's going on? I hope that your video is going well, brother. Y'all got a new video out. I was supposed to be in it, but since he got so caught up with that move, I couldn't get it together. So support the brother. Let's get it started. Let's get it cracking, y'all. Let's get it cracking. I'm waiting on Ron. So y'all, this is called pop-up. Ron reached out to me and was like, let's do a pop-up. Everybody trying to get me out of my little funk. I am not in a slump, y'all. I'm just dealing with teenagers. As you can see, I had to pause for a minute because they had their little TV going and they just laughed in the background. So if y'all hear kids in the background, well, they're not kids. They're kind of adult-ish. They kind of like 19, 18, 21, those ages, 16. So they're a little older. But they promised to allow me to do to be nice and not be loud. You know, they haven't seen each other in a long time, so they excited. So I just say, just keep that volume down just a smidget. 34 people in the house. What's going on? I'm waiting on Ron. Once Ron come in here, we can get started. So let me tell y'all what Sister E has been doing until Ron comes. So I have been traveling. I have a new motto. Well, it's always been my motto. Live my best life and enjoy life. So Sister E been hanging out. I had some kids. My daughter and my nieces are with me. So I've been with that. What else I've been doing? Traveling though. I went to, where did I go? What's up? Where did I go? I ain't been doing too much. I went to New York for a little bit, which I always do now. Took the kids out of town. We went to Six Flags, been in Memphis. What else have I been doing? Just hanging out, family. So that's where I've been for a little bit. But I'm back. Guess who's back? I'm waiting on Ron Shield so we can get started. So, family, what's been going on with y'all? We playing catch up. Come on in the house. 37 people. Come on. I know people are like, wait, Sister E is live? Yes, I am live, family. Yes, I am. Y'all. Tisk, tisk, tisk. I'm not going to do it this time. I'm going to let Pastor Kelly do it. But I feel a tisk in my spirit. I'm like, oh, Pastor Kelly keeps saying, don't say nothing, sis. My feelings was hurt a little bit, but I came out my little feelings with these Hebrews, some of them, and I feel a tisk, tisk, tisk in my spirit, but I'm not finna do it because the brothers keep saying, don't. I'm like, I can speak for myself. I think I can. They like, let us do this. I can't stand a lot. I just, pray for me, saints. Pray for me. I can't stand somebody who just sit and lie, though. I just can't. I can deal with a lot. But a liar and a deceiver, tisk, tisk, tisk. Y'all know how I get. Come on in here. But I'm not going to do it. I'm going to let Pastor Kelly do his tisk. Because y'all know me, honey. I said, these things don't realize I'm 100% Memphis. Don't let it fool you. But I have to just let the bros handle. I'm going to let the brothers. I just can't stand a liar. That's just, it gets under my skin. We working together to try to get some truth and some understanding. And here come these folks. Like, right around the time the Rebirth come out with their video. Who has watched the Rebirth video? Everybody who has, please give me a 1 if you have. Give me a 2 if you haven't. 1 if you have, 2 if you haven't. Devin, you haven't seen it? Robert, you haven't seen it? None of y'all, you haven't seen it? Darnell, what? Now I would expect y'all to have seen it. Liam, you haven't seen it. Let's see. We got my brother here now, y'all. Let me bring him in. But the ones who ain't seen it, y'all come on now. Okay, so let's bring him on in. What's going on, my brother Divine Prospect?
What's going on, sis?
Nothing much. Doing a late night show. You want me to give you a minute to fix your camera? I just had to do that.
Yeah. No, it's all good. I was trying to figure out why it looks. Does it look weird to you, or does it look fine?
It looks like you have like one of those filters on. You know how you have the filter and it makes it look stretched. And are you using like a camera, or are you using?
No. So this only happens when I join other people's StreamYard, but it's not like that when I do mine. So I don't know what's going on. I don't have. Go ahead. What you said?
I said you look fine though.
Oh, okay.
Right, it's just a little. It looks a little like wide angle a little bit, but you look fine. You're good.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right, cool. Yeah. Give me 1 second. I gotta grab your link. Are you live on your main channel?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna share the link real quick.
So once we get started, family, this is gonna be interesting because it's gonna be open conversation between me and Mr. Divine Prospect. Let me see. Your name shouldn't be highlighted, Robert. I don't know why your name is highlighted in orange. After that, just a good walking shut up. Muscular disorder. You told me she need a wheelchair. You know, that's a lot of issues. What's going on? You know, type while we waiting. Yeah, and some tests. She had Convo causing all of her functions from development, her digestive system, muscular system. Just let me know when you're ready, and I'll talk to everybody. But who haven't seen, if you've not seen, like I said, the documentary Reclaiming the Thrones, go ahead and get it. I've pretty much watched it, and it was pretty good. I'm gonna be honest with the family. I have not finished the last one. I've not finished the last. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yes, that was. Talking about my mic.
No. It sounded like something would go da 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 da, and then you went out. It sounded like you was remixing it on the fly.
I was trying to fix this because it's twisting, but I'll leave it alone. So let me know when you're ready.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay, so this is just pop up. You said we had a conversation. I guess I want to know what Ron was. I tell people about Stephen Darby, but one of the first people that I ever came in contact with in the Hebrew community, and I hope you remember this, Ron, was Ron. One of the funniest thing that I remember was I had posted something and I said Jesus, and you say sis, so you still using that name? And I was like, what? But that was back in my early days. Ron knew me when I first came into the truth. Ron knew me before anybody, before Pastor Kelly, anyone, because I came across Ron with his Edomite series that he did when he did the history of the Edomites. And I was like, wow, it was really good. And I think I messaged you. And after I messaged you, you came back and me and you talked off and on about the understanding of the truth. So I want you to tell me how long have you been in the truth, Ron? And I know you probably explained this before, but I want to kind of hear it because I don't think I've ever heard it.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. So I want to first say thank you, Sister E, for allowing me on your show. I know it was a pop up. I reached out to you because I know we haven't really done a one-on-one in a while. And I haven't been able to make it to any of your panel discussions. We've been having some really good panel session over the past couple of weeks, and I wasn't able to make it. And I see now you're starting to go live a little later than usual, like the times that I go live. You know what I'm saying? So that's normally when I catch you. But for me, you know, I came into Christianity out of curiosity back in 2008. I mean, when I was young, I was raised, you know, in the holiness, Pentecostal, you know, kind of scene. You know, I went to church when I was, I don't know, from the time I was born all the way until I decided I didn't want to do that no more. When I was in my early 20s, maybe like 21. And then I kept away from that type of stuff for about 5 years of my life. And then I decided, you know, one day when I was at work, I worked in IT at that time, and I had like a software support help desk support role. So I had a lot of time on my hands in between calls, so I could do a lot of reading and research and stuff like that. So I went online and I saw a documentary called Zeitgeist. Very interesting. But anyway, so I saw that documentary and it kind of like really blew me away. But while I was watching it, I was recalling some scriptures that I had vaguely remembered from the times I was in church. And I was like, wow, you know what? This seems kind of related. You know, I didn't know how related it was, but it did seem somewhat related. So I went and did some research into the Bible at that time, into prophecy and stuff like that. And that's when I was able to uncover that, wow, you know what? A lot of stuff that I see in Zeitgeist, with the exception of the part that did talk about Christianity, because this is a part that actually talks about Christianity in Zeitgeist, and that's been debunked because a lot of that is pseudo. But aside from that, talking about the one world order, about, you know, there being one currency and the RFID chip, and, you know, how the Vatican controls the religious, you know, communities and stuff like that. So it was a lot of stuff that I've heard about vaguely before, but it started putting things together. And I looked in the Bible and I said, wow, the Bible talks about a one world order, religious system, economic system, political system, etc. And I started doing more research into the Bible. And from there, I started going back to the old church I used to go to just for Bible study, so I can ask questions. And conveniently enough, they were teaching on the book of Revelation when I started there. It was really crazy. And then I was asking some questions, doing some research, bringing research there and everything like that. And people was like, I guess, in awe, because the pastor was like this guy that used to be from the military, and, you know, he was very well respected, and he liked order and structure and so forth. And he wasn't used to people bringing that amount of information there and asking the amount of question I was asking. So I wasn't like hammering him with it, but whenever I got the opportunity, I would ask a question, I would share information, and I would do those type of things. I was really interested in learning. I had no hesitation because I didn't really have a relationship with this individual to kind of feel like, oh my God, this guy is like, you know, top bishop or whatever the case may be. I was just hungry for information, you know. So then my journey in Christianity started from there. I know my grandmother prior to that had like asked me some questions about salvation and stuff like that. And I said, you know, asked me if I'm saved. I said, I guess, I don't know. She said, no, you need to be sure, blah, blah, blah. So my grandmother was another impetus of me pretty much going towards that direction. And so in 2009, early 2009, I went to go visit my grandmother in Atlanta. And I really wanted to kind of get at her, you know, because she had got at me before I started doing heavy studying into Christianity. And I never got the opportunity to do that. And then I came back a second time in January of 2009. And at that time, they had a service at her church. And I said, well, maybe I can get the pastor, you know. But, you know, they had a church service. They had an altar call. Pastor preached a good message. I came to the altar and I was just pouring out, you know what I'm saying, and saying, Jesus, 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 right? So anyway, so I had that experience, right? Speaking in tongues. Which is interesting because I can speak on tongues on demand, you know, according to what's taught in the church. I could do that on demand. I kind of learned how to do that. It's very interesting that it just became second nature to me that I could do it. I would do it on the show, but I don't want to freak nobody. But anyway, so from that journey in 2008, when I first started delving in Christianity, all the way up into 2012, I had a friend of mine, and she decided she was going to go along with that journey with me as well, getting into Christianity, getting into church and stuff like that. And she was doing a lot of reading, research, and studying over the years. However, she just couldn't connect, right, with all these patristic sources or church fathers and, all of these Protestant reformers. And, she just didn't feel a connection with that. So in 2012, she had, posed something to me. She said, hey, I'm looking into some new stuff now. How about you look into it? And it was like about the conscious community and Black nationalism and stuff like that. And I knew a little bit about that, but I wasn't really heavy into it. So she said, yeah, man, let me show you about some people. So she told me about Sinetta and all these other people that was on this platform and all the knowledge they kick in. And then she used to follow like Saraswati Seti and sort of show me all these books and all these other teachers in that community. And some of them I heard of, right? And looked up, but most of them I didn't. So she exposed me to that. And she said, hey, maybe you want to look into this information. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm a Christian. She needs her soul saved because she's obviously lost. So I'm going to look into this stuff and try to find an Achilles heel so I can get at her and use that as a moment, to call her back to Christ. So anyway, lo and behold, that never happened because as I started to research stuff in early 2012, there was so many things that were just connecting from the information she was giving me. I learned more heavily about white supremacy and white supremacy's effects and where it stemmed from and so forth. And in doing all my searching, I never left the Bible, but I was leaving Christianity, right? Because of so much that I was researching and finding out. And I was like, man, this is a lot. So what I was doing during that period of time is that I had transitioned from Orthodox Christianity to what we call Messianic Judaism, right? During that period of time in 2011, going to 2013. And during that period of time, I found a lot of stuff. I said, man, how come we not going back to like the culture Jesus had and the apostles had and stuff like that? I'm like, we could better understand things if we do that. So during that process, I started in 2013, I think end of 2012, 2013, going to all of these lectures and stuff that was being done in the conscious community and all of the stuff that they were saying, about Black consciousness. And sometimes they would like attack the Bible and Christianity and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, this is fascinating, fascinating stuff. And I asked questions and stuff like that. I got to build a rapport with people before they even knew who I was. And I was like, man, a lot of this stuff is true. Some of the stuff doesn't seem true, but they exaggerate in that community. I said, but man, I don't think Christianity is for me. I said, but I can't let this book go. I'm saying? Like something's attached me to that book. So in 2013, I decided to go into the Moorish Science Temple of America and visit them for maybe about 6-7 sessions. I went into the mosque out here of Nation of Islam, visited them several times. I went to this Kemetic temple that was out in New York, visited them a couple of times. Let me see, what else did I go? There was another place that I go. So I was going to each one of those schools of thought in the conscious community, spending time with them, asking them questions, doing community events with them and stuff like that. And just kind of get a feel of everything and kind of see, if one of these things is probably, will fit well with me. And then towards the end of 2013, I would say, quote, Q4 of 2013, I was, recalling back about my interactions with Hebrew Israelites, because as a Christian apologist, I was preaching, teaching, helping with Bible studies. I was doing evangelism. I was ministering. I was a minister at a church. I went through church seminary classes and all of that. So I would like debate with Hebrew Israelites. But then I thought about it. I said, you know what? I don't like how they were coming across. They're very, harsh and abrasive and so forth. I said, but what about the claim that they're making, that we are the children of Israel? I said, that's very powerful. I've never heard that before, except from these guys. So I said, well, let me research it. So in 2013, I started researching it, and then I started to uncover the truth. And I said, wow, this is incredible. I said, but I don't know if I'm ready to transition fully yet to that. Let me just do some more deep diving. So from 2013 is really when I started my journey as an Israelite, but I never fully transitioned into 2014, right? So in 2014, I did my first sermon for Kingdom Harbinger Ministries. And in that sermon, I had maybe about, it was like 9 people that showed up, right? Not a lot of people, 9 people that showed up. And pretty much what I was doing is I was teaching a message called the Gospel of the Kingdom, because I've always heard about the gospel of Christ that Christians, push in regards to Paul's theology. But I said, what about the gospel of the kingdom that Yeshua was preaching, right? Because remember, I was still kind of dabbing in Messianic Judaism as well as everything else. So I did a whole sermon on that. I thought it was a good sermon, but I realized something was wrong. And I realized that I could not keep the facade of Christianity or Messianic Judaism or whatever else on me, because we are the children of Israel. So this message of the gospel of the kingdom is for our people. And I was like, wow, yeah, is that what I'm missing? So I was kind of, divinely inspired to take that message that I was doing initially with KHM and pitch it towards our people. And that's when things started to take off. And then I said, wow, you know what? Going through all these different schools of thought, I said, man, I would love to bring unity amongst these individuals. So that's when I went to the U.S. ISPA cookout in 2014, in July 2014. And when I went there, you know what I'm saying, I met a lot of people from the conscious community that was there. Some of them I have seen previously because I went to some of their lectures and stuff like that, debates and stuff like that. And then that's when I formally met Sonetta. And then, I chopped it up with him. My dad was with me. We chopped it up with him. And he put the camera on me. He said, yo, brother, you can see I got some knowledge. You want to spit some stuff? I was like, yeah, I guess, So I kind of introed myself and thanked him for his platform. And then I just went in, right? But he never posted that footage. It's crazy. And that was in 2014 in July. So after that, me and Sonetta built a good rapport up. I started showing up in maybe 2 or 3 more of his videos since then. And in September, I actually did a full-fledged lecture, because I did that lecture out here in Atlanta, but I finally did that same lecture in New York. And then from there, all these people was like showing interest and wanted to know who I was. And, oh man, I never seen anything like that before. And from there, that's when I got involved in a conscious community and publicly in the Israelite community. And then from there, from 2014 to now, just about my whole resume, you can see online, you know what I mean? So that's how things started with me.
That's amazing journey. You went step by step. It's interesting. You said speak in tongues on demand, and you said, I don't want to shock. I can do the same. I think a couple of us said, yeah. I grew up Baptist, and Baptists, they don't have that at all, period. And then later on went into the Pentecostal arena, and that was like in my teenage years. And what people don't understand, that a lot of us were already in ministry. I grew up in the church. My teenage years, I was in a church, a part of ministry. In fact, that's where I met my husband and got married, when I was married, in church and in ministry. And then later on, when I got older, I remained in ministry. I think I was like you. I took a break because I saw the hypocrisy. It just wasn't matching. I'm looking at these ministers who are ministering to the people, all the while preaching the gospel, but passing their number down to me. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Wait, this is the gospel. Why do I have your phone number and your wife is just a couple of feet away from me? And I had to take a break. I was like, I can't do this. And I had to take a break from my own just mental health, because it's draining. You see the hypocrisy, then you're living somewhat of a lie, because you're doing your own thing, because in that environment is do what thou wilt, pretty much. I hate to say it like that, but it is. And when you have a connection with Yah, it just doesn't sit well with you. And I had to leave, and I had to sit out. And that was around the time when I came across some of your videos. Because at that time I was trying to figure out, what is this? The Bible says one thing: my people are hurting. The church is a hospital with nobody getting well. Bunch of sick people. What's really going on? And I ran across, I think one of the first ones, it was around that time. I think his name was Drawback Jacob, him. And I said, okay, this makes sense. And then I started researching more, and then I actually saw you on Sinetta, and then looked for your videos. And I said, that makes sense. And when I started watching a few of your things, I said, I got to reach out to this brother. And you were the first one in the Hebrew community that I said, I got to reach out to, because I'm confused. I'm all over the place. And you sent me a whole bunch of documents to read. And I read some of it, and it made sense. I said, it's clicking with me now. And you said, sis, anytime you have a question, please reach out. And that's when I started my journey. And my journey led to me having a moment to just pull all the way back from the church, pull all the way back from a lot of my church friends, because they start questioning everything that I started believing in, like I was crazy. And I was like, no, This ain't crazy. This makes more sense than what I'm getting inside of the building. And one of the things I said, our people are sick because they're not honoring Yah. He gave our people the covenant. And because of that, he is holding us accountable. And if we're not falling in line with his word, we are going to feel his wrath. He never gave the covenant to any other community but us. So the accountability is great on us. And that's when it started clicking. That's when I said, yep, I got to make some changes because my life is in complete dysfunction. So with that, that's when I had to make some changes about my belief, pull back from some things in the word, from the church scene, choir scene, gospel scene, all that entire scene, I had to take a break. And once I got done with the break, I came out on the other end and made that decision that I said, we're his people and I'm pulling away. This isn't the doctrine that he wants us to follow. This isn't it. I can't do it anymore because it's hurting me and it's ultimately hurting my family. Um, and it's been a journey, and throughout the journey, you've been a part of that journey. And I always talk about other people, and I say I can never forget Ron Shields because Ron was one of the ones that reached out and said, "Sis, hey, I can help you through it." And this was back in, I still got the message. This was back in 2015. I can't hear you.
Yeah, I said it was a long time ago, about 6 years, almost 6 years ago.
Yes, and
Yeah.
most people don't know that.
Yeah.
I've been talking to Ron since 2015. Then I think when I got on Berean TV is when everything started shifting.
Correct.
Because at first, I was just chilling in the back.
In the background, yep.
Yes. And when I got on Berean, it's ironic that it was never meant to do any of this. It was just to be a part of his Bible study. And it led to this, and I was like, this is interesting. The people that I've been watching, I'm interacting with people like you and Dante and Teo and all these people and Pastor Kelly, because I came across Pastor Kelly right after Darby passed away. So that's when I came across Pastor Kelly and Majors. So it was much later, but I think, it's just interesting. So quick question. So you brought up something, and I wish I could go back. You brought up your background and your journey and where you are now. So give us an understanding of where you are now. Where is Ron far as in our community and your beliefs?
So where am I at now? That's an excellent question. I think one of the major things that I share or teach or however you want to put it in the community is understanding the context of the Bible, right? Mm-hmm. Understanding the language, the culture, the history, and everything else that comes along with that. So the Bible was not written in a vacuum, meaning that the Israelites were not isolated on an island somewhere and it was just them. They had other sister cultures, what they call them, that were neighboring them, right? Sister kingdoms that were neighboring them, right? So there were things that were common in the ancient Near East, and then there was things that were unique to the Israelite culture themselves. And those are the things that we typically ascribe to as divine inspiration, because what other way would these people get this unique understanding of something that was uncommon in the era in which they lived, right? So I tell people, I said, unless you understand the culture or the cultural context of the Bible, it's going to be extremely difficult for you to interpret it, because what happens is whenever there's a gap in understanding, we typically fill it with our own presuppositions or our preconceived beliefs based on our contemporary upbringing, and we read that into the text, right? And I'll give you a great example of that, something that you're probably familiar with. And I was going over with a couple that's part of our KHM earlier today, and they brought up Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 5, right? In Deuteronomy 22, verse 5, it talks about the garments that a woman shouldn't wear and a man shouldn't wear, right? And a lot of people bring that out and say, oh, that means pants. Why you got those pants on, sis? It's the first thing they say. And I think I listened to the show you was talking about. You said you were talking to IUIC, and you said you mentioned me to them.
Yeah.
They looked at you crazy, and he was like, you started talking to them about like something of substance, and they're like, I says, I got you, but sis, what you got on, sis? It's like, yo, what? You just missed the whole thing. Like
it went over his head.
Exactly. So my objective as I teach is I teach others not to be students, but I teach them to teach me. If a person who I teach cannot teach me, then I fail them. If a person that I teach cannot exist independent of me, then I fail them. If I am not able to create an opportunity for that person who is taught to be able to do for self, then I fail them, right? So looking at the culture helps to unlock a myriad of different things that was unknown to us previously. So a good example, we went to two scriptures in Deuteronomy chapter 22, and I'm gonna show it to you real quick, right? If you're okay with that, all right? Oh, you muted, sis.
No problem. You got it. You got it, or you want me to look it up, or you already?
I'll be able to share my screen.
Yep.
Okay, let me see. Okay, cool. So let me grab the scriptures. And what I typically do is equip people to study the text for themselves, which I think most teachers should be doing. But let's take a look at it. So let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 22. So the website I'm on, and I'm sure most people are familiar with it, but we may have some people who are not. This is called BibleHub.com. Okay. It is an online Bible software, which is a great resource that gives you commentaries, interlinears, lexicons, parallel translations. It also gives you other manuscripts like the LXX or the Septuagint. It gives you commentary. I think I mentioned commentary. It gives you topical studies. So like if you want to learn about love, it gives you all the scriptures on love and goes into there. It has a TSK, which is the Treasury of Scriptural Knowledge, which is used to cross-reference scriptures, and a host of other things that you have on here. Blue Letter Bible is another site that does something similar, okay? So they have atlases on here, dictionaries on here, Greek and Hebrew, transliterations, and translations, and the actual manuscripts themselves. Multilingual, if you're Spanish, if you learn Mandarin Chinese, you want to see the Bible in those languages, they have it here. They give you a chronology via the timeline, search tools, just everything you could think about is on here, right? So it is an online Bible tool that you can use for free. Now, there's other companies that make Bible softwares, which I prefer, which is like Logos and Accordance, eSword, several others that make a full-fledged Bible software. And the reason why I like those is because you can customize those based on your learning and studying habits, right? You can't really customize this, but this is free, okay? So in starting off here in the search box, you definitely want to type in the scripture. In this case, we're going to do Deuteronomy chapter 22. And this is the actual text, right? Let me zoom in case it might be a little bit small because I have a really, for 34-inch wide QHD screen. So it looks different for other people than it does for me. So can you see this, Sister E?
Yep, we can see it.
All right. So starting here, and again, this has a lot of basic tools. If you want better tools, you have to invest in it. So it actually costs money. But on my Patreon, I've purchased all these things, the software, language courses, everything. So people have access to all of that for sign up for my Patreon. They get access to all of these things at no cost: Bible software, language courses, website access to stuff, etc. Because I pay for it, I put it up there so everybody else can benefit from it, right? But here they give you a good amount of tools so that you can make your way through the text. And then over time, as you learn the language, the history, the culture, you start to look at what's taught in that field of study, in academia, and you use a degree of discernment, right? When you approach the text, and you have to do so without any biases, right? So if you automatically have in your mind, oh, somebody taught me that women wearing pants is wrong, and you go read the text, you're going to try to force the text to defend that position. And that is not being fair to the text. The text itself was written from an author to its immediate audience. So it was written to that immediate audience, but it can also be used for us today, right? Because it has us in mind, especially when you read Deuteronomy chapter 30. It has those who are in exile in mind to return back to our culture, so that way we can awaken to who we are and we can turn back to Yah. We can cry out, repent, turn back to Yah. And when that prophecy was given at that time of what would occur to us going in exile, and the foresight further down the line, Yeshua came on the scene and he showed us how to exemplify Torah culture in your everyday life. And his teachings brought life and that more abundantly to those who follow Yeshua, right? It's pretty remarkable. But you have to be able to say, okay, it's not written directly to me, but it's written for me. So knowing that that's the case, because we're the descendants of Israel, and this is right here is the codification, the collation, and the condensation of thousands of years of culture, of spiritual experiences, of do's and don'ts, of wisdom that's been compiled and encapsulated and then handed down for us to crack open and read today, right? And when you go to Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 5, you can't approach the text with your modern understanding, because the clothes that we wear today, they did not wear that back then, right? So you have to keep that in mind. And then you got to look at the words. So here it says, a woman must not wear men's clothing, and a man must not wear women's clothing, for whoever does these things is detestable to Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, or the Lord your God. Now, anytime you're doing a study and you're reading it in an English translation, English is a secondary language in regards to the text. The text was inspired to be written for the Old Testament, what we call the Old Testament, in Hebrew and Aramaic, and the New Testament in what we call Koine Greek, right? But then there's other versions of it like Syriac and Arabic and other ones, etc. So if that's the case, that means whoever translated this, they translated it from a Hebrew and Aramaic manuscript. In this case, this will be Hebrew. Aramaic doesn't show up into post-exilic texts like Ezekiel, Daniel, etc. Ezra. Some of those have Aramaic in it. So when we look at this and we know, okay, this is in English. So how do I get a little deeper into this to kind of understand what's going on here? Well, there's key things you got to understand. That word there for man is very interesting, because that's a bad translation, right? But let's go into and see what's going on. So you click the number 5, which will bring you directly. It'll zoom you right into the particular verse, and you can read other parallel translations. The NIV, which is called a dynamic equivalency translation, which means when the translator sat down, looked at the original language in Hebrew and said, okay, how can we best translate it? They decided, hey, the best way to do so is to translate it for thought. So the NIV does have some word for word elements of it, but most of it is thought for thought. So an example of thought for thought is if, let's say, somebody who's Chinese, I'll give you a modern example. Somebody who's Chinese is reading a book that was translated from English to Chinese, right? And one part of the book, you have something in there that says, Sally punched the clock and then went to work. And then that person from China comes over here in America on a visa, right? They go to get hired for a job, and then they're about to go to the job, like their first day, and they see a clock and they punch the clock. And then they walk into their job. You would look at them like, what the heck just happened? Like, what is you doing right now?
Yeah.
They'll say, no, I read, it says you punched the clock before. And be like, no, you don't physically punch anything. Okay. So look, that's an idiom. It's a cultural expression. You got to live here in order to understand what that means. So they show them, look, that's just a means of you documenting your time for how many hours you work, the time that you come into work, you go to lunch, you come back for lunch, and you leave work. They're like, oh, okay. So that's what happens to a lot of us when we approach the text, because we're not there during the Iron Age period where a lot of these things were taking place, or in this context, in the late Bronze Age period when the Israelites were exiting out of Egypt. We wasn't there during that time. So if they have a cultural expression, unless you understand their culture, you're going to be misinterpreting what's going on. So it takes a good degree of studying with the right tools, the approach, and the sources to be able to better decipher the text. And before I go, if Sister E is okay with it, I'll share some of those resources with you guys that you guys can go and get yourself.
No problem. I'm good.
Okay, thank you, sis. All right, so as we're looking at this, it says a woman must not wear man's clothing, nor a man wear women's clothing, for Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, your power detests anyone who does so, right? The Lord your God detests anyone who does so. Now, what you want to do in order to see the underlining text, the original language, which in this case is Hebrew, and a format where it's not foreign to you, but you can actually see it. So I teach biblical Hebrew, right? On a beginner and intermediate level, right? Because I'm at an intermediate level with the Koine Greek, intermediate level with biblical Hebrew. So I teach what I know so that people have enough resources so they can start to decipher the text themselves. So what I normally tell people is that, hey, the best way to start learning the language is looking at an interlinear. And I'm going to show you how you can get a free one just by using this here, right? So if you scroll up on Bible Hub, there's a button here that says INTERLINE, which is short for interlinear. You want to click that button. And what that does is that it parses out the scripture. And parsing out the scriptures, parsing just means a separation of something. So those of us who study biblical Hebrew, we know parsing is that I'll look at a text in Hebrew, and what I'll do is that I'll look at all of the constituents that make up the syntax of the sentence. So there's one part, two part, three part. So in this case, lo is a negative privative. That's what they call it, which means it negates something. Same thing when you put alpha privative in front of a word in Koine Greek, it's the negation of something, meaning not, or the opposite of what's being said. So in Hebrew, if you look at like the 10 Commandments, where it says do not kill, do not steal, you'll see lo that comes before it because it's telling you kill. Lo means don't kill. Steal, lo means don't steal, right? So when we're parsing, we're taking out each of these individual parts. We're taking out the adjectives, the adverbs, the nouns, the pronouns, the prepositions, right? The conjunctions. We're parsing all of these pieces out. And then what we're doing is we're looking at each piece, translating it to understand what it is. And then when we put everything back together, it creates clauses. And out of those clauses, we can determine what's going on. A lot of times that's not enough. You got to go back into the archaeology or the material culture. The items that these people left behind helps to also interpret gaps in the scriptures where it doesn't give you any explicit answer to things, right? But the first part in learning language and looking at interlinear helps like this online are very, very great because what it does, like for example, for lo, it gives you the Strong's keyed number at the top, 3808. It gives you the transliteration of the Hebrew word in English. In this case, is lo. And then it gives you the Hebrew, which is lamed, cholam, and aleph, lo. And then it gives you the direct English translation of it, not. Now, when you read this, the English part, it doesn't make a lot of sense because it's not using English syntax. Hebrew syntax has verb, subject, object. Verbs or the action is really the most important thing in regards to Hebrew language. And the English language, which comes from a West Germanic language, which then stems from a much earlier language that's all Western, the focus is on the subject, verb, object. Subject, verb, object. Sally kicked the ball. Sally is what's called the nominative or the subject. Kicked, which is the verb. And in this case, it is in the simple active voice. She kicked the ball. And then kicked, and then you have the ball, the being the definite article, meaning something specific. And the ball is your object or your accusative. Sally kicked the ball. In Hebrew, it would read something different. It would say, she kicked Sally the ball. She kicked Sally the ball because the focus is on the action, then the person, the subject, and then the accusative or the object. Okay? So keep that in mind, why you cannot look at the interlinear direct translations because it's not designed to make sense in English format, but it's directly translating how it reads in the Hebrew. So in this case, it says not shall wear. Then it says anything that pertains to a man upon a woman, right? So let's stop there. I'm going to show you something. So in Hebrew, the word for man is ish. In Hebrew, the word for woman is ish'ah. The ah or the hey suffix on that word ish with the ah attached to it because you have a diacritic mark attached to it. Right here, you'll see it, which is the kamet under the shin. Anytime you put the ah, that's this kamet under the shin and the hey. Anytime you put ah there, that's a feminine noun. It turns into a feminine noun. And in this case, it represents a woman. But ish typically represents a man. However, here it says, lo yihye keli gebir al isha welo. Gebir, but they're translating that as man. Well, that's interesting. Isha means woman. Ish means man. So they have it right for the Isha, for the woman, but then why are they calling the man a gebir? What does that mean? So what you want to do is you want to click on this 1397 right here, which links you back to the Strong's. And again, Strong's is okay for beginners, but as you study, you're going to tend to transition away from the Strong's lexicon, which is very dated, into much more recent. Like a good one is the Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament, the Halot. That's a good one. Or you can get a one that's a little bit older than that. That's still good. The enhanced Brown Driver Briggs lexicon, that's free. You can get that online because it's in the public domain. But there's other ones that are actually better than both of those. And those are like at more scholarly levels, right? That I like. I just like to read that stuff. That's me. But I try to take that type of stuff and make it available to y'all so you can see it. So here, 1397 is going to link you back to this word so you can get more information about it, okay? And when you click on 1397, the word is gebir, right? It's a masculine noun, gebir, and they have a simple definition for man. Now, this is Strong's Concordance entry, which is, again, very dated. But if you go down to the New American Standard Exhaustive Concordance, it's from the root word gabar. And as you can see, it says boy, everyone, man, man's, men, warrior. Interesting. And then you go over here and look at like Exodus 12 and 37. I did a whole lecture on this one verse and showcase that we think 600,000 men left, and that would equal to about 3 million women. That's not translated correctly. I actually have a good book over here, an author by the name of Seymour Ben-Dor. It's called The Social Structure, and he actually references that in that book as well. One of the few places that I see that actually translates it appropriately in regards to numerical system that would have been more closer to that historical context than today. Very mind-blowing. But the key thing to look at here is when they were counting the men, when they left out of Egypt, they were referring to the men that were able to war from ages 20 to whatever age, because you could be 60 and still war. Matter of fact, Caleb and Joshua was in their 80s and fighting. Okay, so whoever was able-bodied, so if you was maimed, if you was blind, if you was handicapped in any way, if you was under 20, you were not a warrior. Therefore, you were not counted because they were concerned with the men who were able-bodied to fight. Because as they left out of Egypt, they fought a lot of battles before they even got into the land. So it was keeping a track of those individuals and then the heads of those households, etc. Right? And that book back there breaks down the entire social structure of ancient Israel. It's an excellent book, right? But if you click on this where it says word origin, the word gabar, it takes you back to the actual verb gabar, which means to be mighty, to be strong. And then over here to the right, you'll have the concordance, the Englishman's concordance. And pretty much what it is it's showing you the places or the entries in the text where this word is at. So Genesis 7:18 says the water prevailed and increased, right? And this has to do with Genesis 7, which we know was the case with Noah. It says here, Genesis 49:26, of your father have surpassed the blessings. Again, to be strong, to be mighty, to surpass, to magnify, to strengthen, to exert greatness. So this is not a regular man. This is a mighty man, a soldier, a warrior. So you shall not, it says here, that which pertains to a warrior, a soldier, upon a woman, it should not be. You should not put on. And a man or a warrior should not put on the simlat, the garment of a woman, for it is a abomination, towabat, Yahweh Eloheka. It is an abomination to the Most High, your power. Well, what is this talking about then? So it's not talking about a regular man, which would be the word ish, which would represent a civilian man. It's referring to a Geber, which is a mighty warrior man. He should not put the things on of a woman. Now, what does any of that mean? Well, you got to study the ancient Near East. What used to happen in warfare is that you'd have men that were soldiers and they were cowards. Whenever you have a situation, when the army that was fighting was overcoming them, those men will run and take off their garments, and they will go and put on the cloak and dressing like a woman, so they can look like a civilian and they will not be killed. So the Most High says, no, if you're a Geber, a warrior, it is your job to fight to the death, not put on the cloak as a woman as a coward and cower and hide. And it's not for a woman to go and take up that man's garments and go fight a battle, because she is responsible for raising the children and ensuring that the seed of those men going to war are successful. Wow. And that they're able to thrive. So I have a good book on warfare. If you're interested, it talks about this type of stuff, that when you start to learn the culture, because what happens is the scripture gives you the keys, to unlock things within the overall context in which the Israelites were living. And now when you understand it, you're like, oh, okay. And then somebody says, well, what about the word breeches? What about breeches? The Bible talks about breeches, right?
He said that to me. He said, they said breeches in the Bible. Oh.
Who said that to you today?
The guy, no, the IUIC guy.
Oh, he said that to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna break this down we're gonna go to Exodus chapter 28 and verse 42. And I'm gonna show you what this means within its historical, cultural, and linguistic context, right? So Exodus chapter 28 and 42. Right? So here it says, Wa'aseh lechem miknese bad lakasot besar erwa min mata naim wa'ad yerakayim yiyu. Right? So the key thing is trousers. That's what we would say is, oh, that's trousers. So you thinking breeches, trousers, whatever. You're thinking that means an outer garment of pants that you put on, right? Because in our culture, and I can speak for myself, I can't talk about every other man. Most men wear briefs, boxer briefs, or boxers as an undergarment, and then they wear pants as an outer garment. Okay, now there might be some interesting individuals out there that don't wear no underwear. Okay, well, that's something different, but commonly in our culture, that's the typical way that you wear clothing, right? Well, in this case, we thinking trousers mean an outer garment for pants. Well, that's interesting. Let's take a look at that a little further, right? The word there is miknos, and that means what? An undergarment. Now, maybe it's me, but I've never seen no guy wear some jeans and some boxers over his jeans. I'm just saying. I ain't seen that. Maybe you have.
Right. The weirdos in the street. Yep. If I see that, I'm running.
Fact. But now the interesting thing is when you go down to what says word origin, it says it comes from kanas. Well, let's see what kanas means, right? Remember, a lot of verbs, nouns in Hebrew are verbal nouns, which means it normally has a verbal root or shoresh, right? Which is just a root word. And in this case, kanas literally means to gather or collect. That's what it means. Assemble, collected, gathering, gathered. So wrap, well, what do you mean by that? Well, when the man wears these breeches, which we're about to see in that's instructed for the priest to wear, whenever he wears these breeches, the purpose of it is to gather or keep secure his genitalia. That's the purpose of it. And it's only from your waist to your thigh. They're undergarments.
Just made me think about something. Mormons believe in that.
Well, they believe in holy underwear, okay, right? Because they believe that they have restored the priesthood of Aaron and Melchizedek. That's in Mormonism. I got the book of Mormon there, the Pearl of Great Price, and Doctrines and Coverings back there. And then I got all the periodicals that the Mormon Church has released. And I subscribe to Brigham Young University's newsletters, and I read their scholarship and everything like that. I just love to read stuff, right? But yes, they do have the holy garments because they're pulling it from out of here because they're restoring these ancient priesthoods in Mormonism, right? That's why you have certain handshakes. I can go through all that with you another time. If you're a Mormon to another Mormon, so he knows what priesthood you're from. Oh, you're from the Aaronic priesthood. Okay, I'm from the Melchizedek priesthood, which is higher than the Aaronic priesthood, and you got to go through different rites and rituals to make it there, etc. So anyway, so that's the undergarment. So you're right. Yes, the Mormons do subscribe to that, but they have a totally different spin on it, right? But culturally, in regards to the Israelites, it's referring to the undergarments. Now let's look at the scripture in its context, right? And this is Exodus chapter 20 and 42. So what we're going to do in this blue row here, you can click any one of these, and these are all different translations, right? People say, well, what's the best translation to get? I said, well, technically the best translation is an interlinear because it helps you to learn the language, right? Other than that, these other ones just make it easier to read the text. But sometimes a formal equivalency translation can cause some difficulty because it simply just translates things word for word. So if you go to a place where, like, for example, that Chinese person I said was coming in America, say punch the clock, there's an idiom in Mandarin Chinese for that same term in English here. So if the translator of the book that they read thought in the head and said, oh, you know what? People in China is not going to understand this. So let me find something that corresponds to this idiom in this culture, to this culture, So that way, when they're reading it, it can flow. They can understand. Like, oh, okay. So when they get it over here, they're not physically punching clocks. They know, oh, okay, this is what they mean by that. I got to let them know what my time is coming in and leaving out. So a formal equivalency tries to do word for word translation as much as possible. A dynamic equivalency tries to do thought for thought. The best translation is one that tries to marry both. Okay. And there's a couple of ones that do it. The Net Bible, NET Bible attempts to do that. Okay. The NIV, people give the NIV a hard time, and it's mostly because they don't understand textual criticism of manuscripts. The NIV also attempts to do that, and there's been several updates on the NIV, right? People say, oh, the NIV is leaving out passages of scripture. No, it's not. You know what the NIV is doing? It's translating a different manuscript. The manuscripts you got for the KJV is a totally different family of manuscripts. The ones that they're using for the NIV are earlier manuscripts, some of them. And then you have what's called a critical edition Bible, which are Bibles that have footnotes, that have translators' notes, that have bibliographies, commentaries, all types of stuff to help you to study the text, right? So a lot of Bibles, newer Bibles have what's called critical edition Bibles, and they help you to actually look at footnotes. So sometimes you'll see a verse and you'll see a footnote. You click on it, and it'll give you more information on it because that information is telling you, hey, this is a textual variant. Well, what's a textual variant? Well, we don't have one major manuscript that represents the Hebrew Old Testament, okay, the Hebrew Bible. We don't have that. It's like we don't have one for the New Testament, right? We have thousands of manuscripts. So how do you know which manuscript to follow? Well, you can't follow just one. You have to look at all of them because we don't have the originals, or what we call the autographs. We only have a copy of a copy of a copy, and then a families of copies. So because we have a wealth of copies, we can now put them all together, do a consensus of all the denominators of the things that are the same, leave the numerators out, and from the denominators, look at any smaller or nuanced differences from there. And then from there, we can see the foundation of the original, and then how, as these manuscripts was copied in different regions of the world, how different scribes added to the text. When I say add to the text, a lot of times they've had scribal notes, and then those scribal notes finds their way into the manuscript, and we're able to determine that by finding an earlier manuscript that does not have that. Typically in textual criticism, anything that has the shorter reading is typically the older part of it. Anything that has a much longer reading is typically a later version of that text. Sometimes it may be oral tradition that they'll read in the manuscript and say, wait, it's missing this part, and they'll know that from oral tradition, and they'll add it to the text, right? So it's a lot of things in textual criticism, but the NIV is not designed to deceive you. People say, well, Zondervan created the NIV, and Zondervan also helped publish other things that was really like the devil's Bible or Satan's Bible people talk about. Yeah. Well, interesting, you still use the Zondervan to tell who's Shem and who's Ham. Why are you still using Zondervan resources then? You might as well throw everything out. You know
Correct.
what I'm saying? But that's simply because people, we lack understanding of that stuff. So I try to bring that information out, and I say, hey, the best thing to do is just to learn the language. If you learn the language, it'll take some time, then you don't need no translations. You can start translating yourself. Correct. Right? So, but in the interim, to get to that point, it's good to have a parallel, something that puts all the translations together. So as you're reading it, a lot of times they'll read similar, but sometimes they read wildly different. You say, wait, what is this? Example of that, Genesis chapter 2, where it says, and then the Most High finished all his works that he made in the 6th day, and on the 7th day he rested. But in other translations, it says he finished all his works on the 7th day, and on the 7th day he rested. What? You're gonna say what? Oh, check it out. A Hebrew cycle of reckoning of time begins in the evening, right? During what we call the twilight period, right? So the twilight period is when the daylight is transitioning to darkness, right? So we call Yom can also represent a full day, what we know is 24 hours, or just a portion of the day that has the light. And then Layla, however you want to term it, represents the darkness portion. And there's other words for dark as well. But then that period in between is called Ereb, which means the twilight hours that's transitioning. And then that breaks down to 3 other twilights, which is civil twilight, which means it's getting dark, but you can still do work out in the field. Nautical twilight is getting really dark. You can't really do much work unless it's right in front of you in the field. However, the sailors would use that period of time to look at the stars and use the stars to chart their courses. All right, that's why it's called nautical twilight. And then you have astronomical twilight. Astro has to do with the stars, to the point where the sun is almost completely out of sight. It's almost really dark. You're definitely not going to be outside at that time. And in the ancient times, they didn't have artificial light like we did. They had lamps, right? They had candlesticks and stuff like that, but they gave you limited light. They didn't have electricity, right? So they would confine most of their stuff to indoors at night. So that would be your period of time. So Ereb is that transition. And once the evening hits, that's the first half of the day. And then the morning time, which is the word boker, which is when the night is breaking into daytime. You have that sliver of time in between, which is another transition time or twilight, where now you're going from astronomical twilight to nautical twilight to civil twilight. And now it's enough light outside so you can begin your work. That began there 9 to 5 in the ancient times, right? But when you look at that, a day consists of evening and morning. The scripture says evening and morning, and that was the first day. Evening and morning, that was the second day. Well, what happened on the seventh day was there was an evening and the morning, but the morning did not transition to another evening. It was a perpetual day. It was designed to be daylight forever, provided Adam and Eve was obedient to the statute laws command, because they had dominion over the land at that time and they disobeyed. So when you look at different manuscripts, some manuscripts, like from the Septuagint, Dead Sea Scrolls, Masoretic text, Nash Papyrus, Samaritan Pentateuch, all types of these different versions of the Bible, they have preserved different traditions. Some say the 6th day and the 7th day, which is a later tradition. Some say the 7th day he ceased his works, and on the 7th day and he rested. That's the earlier translation. I mean, the earlier manuscripts say that. And what happened was, over time, as different sects started to come about, they look back, the scribes look back when it was copying the text and say, wait a second, this might have been a scribal error, because our oral tradition says it should be on the 7th day. So they go and they add that to the 7th day. Very, very interesting stuff. People start to use verses to say, oh, the scribe used his pen and mess up the text. That's not true. You gotta prove that. That's not what happened. People had oral traditions and they had other manuscripts and stuff that helped them to create the manuscripts that we have today. They didn't just say, oh, I'm just going to go in here and write something in here to deceive people. That's not what happened, right? But again, a lot of us don't understand it, but that's neither here nor there. So NIV, I'm going to click the NIV for now because I want to show you the context of what we're reading for Exodus chapter 20 and verse 42. So Exodus 20 and 42, if we scroll down, right? And you can jump in at any time. So this is your show. I'm just sharing this to build.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
I enjoy this. You're bringing in great clarification when it comes to women. That's going to lead to my next question. When it comes to women wearing pants, that has been something that we get a lot from the communities, and it goes into the head wrap. I kind of want you to give a little clarification on that.
Sure.
Because we get a lot of pushback on,
Yes.
women in our community. Some wear hair wraps, some don't. Some days I do, some days I don't. So once we do that, I want you to kind of get some clarification into that as well.
Yes, so I'll wrap up on this and I'll transition to that. Somebody in the chat, Sister E, I don't know who this person is, Carrie Joe Dennis.
Yeah.
They're saying that I'm trying to keep you in your perception.
They blocked her. She said, trying to keep me wearing pants. Say, you scratching my itching ears to wear pants. And I'm like, wow.
All I would like, what I do on my show, I invite them on and say, okay, come on, let's talk about it. Because there's no way they can undermine all the stuff we just said.
Yep.
I would love to see them do that, right? So I don't know if that person is still there. If at some point, Sister E, because I know we're coming on an hour now, maybe another 30 minutes if you want to open up the panel for people to come on and chat with us. But that person, she can come on if she has an issue, and I'll be more than happy to reason with her.
Okay. Last 30 minutes, I will put the link. So y'all, Carrie Joe, y'all don't have to block her anymore. They have totally blocked her. Stop blocking her and we'll let her come in if she has questions. But you can.
Okay, so Coco Tawaki Taylor, yes, the main garment was a tunic that was worn on the outside, or sometimes we would call it a robe, or some form of outer linen. But the inner garments, which would be like what we call the breeches or breeches, what they translated, because that comes from Old English, right? That term. And when Rome conquered the Germanic hordes in Europe, there was an intersection of acculturation that took place between the Romans and the native peoples. So a lot of the Romans during that time, they subscribed to Christianity. And what they was doing was using Christianity to civilize the Germanic hordes in Europe. and they started to adopt or pull in certain loan words. So the Bible was introduced to them, and what they was tempting to do to understand the text is they tried ways to find things in the Bible that married up with their common culture. Nobody uses that term britches or breeches anymore. That's an old word. That's like outdated. Yeah. But what happens is and looking at that, we tend to see that intersection of acculturation, where two different cultures are coming together, living side by side, and over time you have an cultural diffusion or exchange of different words and terms and actions and behaviors and worldviews that tend to marry with each other. You know what I'm saying? So I say that to say, when we go look at this, Exodus chapter 28, verse 42, it says, make linen undergarments as a covering for your body, reaching from the waist to the thigh. So if this means pants, then we should only see brothers wearing shorts.
Correct.
That's what it says.
That's interesting.
But then it tells you who this is being spoken to. Aaron and his sons must wear them. Whenever they enter the tent of meeting or approach the altar to minister in the holy place, so that they will not incur guilt and die. So the only time y'all should be wearing shorts or boxer briefs, that's what pretty much what this is if y'all going in the temple. If you're not going in the temple, then y'all shouldn't be putting this on. If you're using this as justification for pants.
Yep, that makes sense.
I didn't write that. I mean, that's the context and that's the language, right? And that's the history of what was going on during that time. So I'll skip past that. I want to show one more thing real quick, sis. It's back in verse 22, and I'll jump into the head covering. And again, it's just little cues like this. The text tries to tell you, if you just use tools available. Bible Hub and Blue Letter Bible are free tools. Use them. If you don't know how to use them, ask somebody and have them train you and show you how to use these things so you can do it for yourself. You don't have to go to somebody and say, hey, what this means all the time. You get the method, the tools, and the sources, and you can do your own studies, right? So, and a lot of teachers get mad at me for that, because I teach people how to do things independent of them. So I take a lot of flack because of that, but I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, there you go. Right. Mm-hmm. So the last one is Deuteronomy chapter 22. And I want to show you something interesting, because a lot of times, man, the dogma in our community, or the presuppositions or the ideas that people have already formulated and don't want to be challenged, that they read into the text, is extremely heavy. We thought it was bad in the Christian church. It's also bad in the Israelite church as well. And we have to fix that through honest and objective research of the text, right? Deuteronomy chapter 22 says something very, very interesting. And I'm gonna touch on this real quick, and I'm gonna touch on the sister's question about head covering, which is interesting because you see I have a kufi on, right? So my head is covered. However, it's like crocheted, so there's like spacing in it, so to keep my head cool. And typically that was done because in the areas in which it was worn, it was a way to keep the sun from beating down too much on the head, but also allowed the head to breathe out as well, because the skin on the top of your head is very porous, right? So it needs air to flow. So, you know, it was them culturally responding to a biological function, okay? Mm-hmm. Deuteronomy chapter 22, and we go to, let's grab the ESV, and let's jump down, right? A lot of people are familiar with this, right? It's called Laws Concerning Sexual Immorality. We're going to jump down to verse 22. Right? Excuse me, 23. Well, 22 and 23, right? I'm going to show you something phenomenal that I rarely ever hear people pull out. But when you go back and look at the words underneath the English translation, it will blow your mind. Check it out. 22 says, if a man is found lying with the wife of another man, both of them shall die. I'll just stay on 22. The man who lay with the woman and the woman, so you shall purge the evil from Israel. Right? So on the surface, it's like, okay, man lying with the wife of another man. Well, did you know in ancient Hebrew, there's no word for wife? There's no word for husband. These words are not there in Hebrew. They do not exist in Hebrew. If you go into the Koine Greek, they don't exist either. They don't. Context is what allows you to translate something as wife or husband. Husband comes from a husband, hus meaning the house. In old Germanic languages and old English, band is something that we know today keeps something together. The band that keeps the house together, that's the man's role. Wife also has a interesting denotation, but I'm gonna let y'all research it. Go to etymologyonline.com, check it out for yourself. Very fascinating, but this stuff is not in Hebrew, okay? However, context allows you to translate it as wife or translate it as husband. However, We don't see the word husband anywhere here. It just says man and wife, man and wife. But check this out. I'm going to show you something very interesting. In Deuteronomy 22, remember, you click on the blue 22, and that'll bring you here to the parallel, and then over to the right, the context, right? We want to go into the Hebrew. So you go up top and click on the interlinear. And here, check it out what it says. Ki yimase ish, right? So keb, ish means man. Okay, if a man is found, lion, im, isha, woman, remember? Be'ulat, which is very, very interesting because there are two different types of woman, but this is the word Baal. So check it out. If a man, again, this is Hebrew, but it's just that if a man is found lying with a woman, and then it's the word married, a married woman. Wait. There's no word for married there in Hebrew. There's no word for wife there in Hebrew. It doesn't exist. This word here is a conjugation of the root word Baal. Check it out. Watch how crazy this is. Then we have the word to a husband. The word is Baal. That's the word for husband in Hebrew. Did y'all know that? But it's not the same way we think about husband today. Check it. Baal is a common noun in the ancient Near East. Some people say, oh, but Baal means another demon or another god or whatever. Not in all contexts. See, this is why context is important. And knowing the ancient Near East is important. Baal was a common word for a head of household, a male who's the head of household. Sometimes it's translated as master in the text, where it says Sarah called Abraham Lord. You know what word she called him? Baal. Why? Because he's the head of household. That's why. So a woman who is governed over by the governor of the home, if a regular man, this word ish, you don't see the word Baal there, that means this man is not head of household wherever he's at. He's not over a home, because then he would be called a Baal. This has to do with a man who is single, that has not created a family, because what happens is the man, when he gets of age and he wants to find a wife, if the marriages are not arranged, he goes and does, a whole thing of looking for a wife. And then he goes, speaks to the father. Once he kicks it off with the woman, speaks it to the father, tells the father, hey, I would like to marry your daughter. The father says, okay, but let me ask her, just like Isaac and Rebekah, because women are not considered property. Never in the text are women considered property. Women are considered obligations of protection and provision by the man who takes them into their home. Anytime you see any other possessions don't have a voice. They can't say yes or no. But when you look at the story of Isaac and Rebekah, when Abraham sent his servant to go find a wife for his son Isaac, and he went and, found her father, he told the father, hey, I was coming here for my master Abraham, and I prayed to the Most High, and these are the structures. If I see a woman do this, I know that's the one for his son Isaac. Man, your daughter did it. Can we take her back with us? He said, okay, but let's ask her. She had to consent. And she said, okay, she agreed to it, right? For whatever her reasons were, she agreed to it. And then she went back and, they got together, and the rest is history, right? But the key thing is this. When that man takes that woman from that home, he brings her into his home. She's not property. No, not at all. Property doesn't have a voice. She is simply part of that household that needs to be provided for, protected, and production should take place. Provision, protection, and production. That's important. That woman is responsible for the domestication of the household, and the father or the man is responsible for the protection and provisions going into the household. But it's the woman who is the manager of the home to make sure everything's easily distributed, taken care of, etc. A lot of times men will have to go and work in the field. Sometimes they will have to go off to war. Sometimes they have to go travel, and the woman will be left home doing much of the work. That's why we see Proverbs 31 woman. She was taking care of all the things in the house because the husband was away. That's because that's what she does. She's a great manager. She knows how to manage the home, right? So in this case, this man is a single man because he's not called the Baal. He is a single man that does not have a home of his own, does not have his own family. And what he's doing is he's going to lie with another man's woman who is under his care or his governance. And then it says, then they shall die, umetu, because both of them, the man that lay with the woman and the woman, for you shall put away the evil from Israel, right? So the key thing is learning culture is important, because if I was to show this to somebody who uses some kind of dogmatic approach to the text. And I said, wait, the text doesn't say the word husband there, doesn't say the word wife there either. And the word married is not even there. It's really deep. It's the woman who's being governed by the governor of the home or the head of household. That's how you know that's a marriage thing going on. And then another man who is not considered a Baal or a master or overseer of a household. He's just a regular person, single male, just going and violating the wife of a man, right? Of a husband. So culture is key to understanding this context.
Yep. This is amazing. I've enjoyed this. You've given so much clarification with this scripture and the last one that we discussed. Now let's segue into that conversation of hair. Yes. That has been a hot topic in the community. Like, I get message after message. Eat cover your head. Eat cover your head. And I'm like, so can you give us some understanding of what that means when it comes to a head covering?
All right, cool. So what scripture you want to get? You want to get the one in Corinthians by Paul? All right. So, and just for the record, there's none of that is in Torah, right? As far as head covering. But head covering symbolize different things in different cultures, right? Let me give you an example. I got tons of books, sis. I'm gonna bring up my Logos software and I'm gonna show you a help study. So a help study is any resource that assists with helping to interpret what's going on in the text, right?
Okay.
So I'm gonna bring it up and I'm gonna share my screen so y'all can see, and we're gonna bring the scripture up. So give me the verse, sis, if you know off the top of your head.
Not on top of my head. Hold on.
I'll find it. I'll get it. Hold on. I get it.
Okay.
All right, here we go. So it should be 1 Corinthians chapter 11, I believe. Let's look it up.
2 and 6, 2, 16, 2 through 16. Yeah. You use the Logos, right?
Yeah, but I also use accordance as well. I have accordance too. And then I use these two sources that you see online, and then I just read a whole bunch of books. So I got other stuff that's like PDFs and stuff like that. Okay. So in my Logos software, I'm gonna minimize my accordance software. Over here, you see where it says head coverings, right?
Can you bring it in a little bit more?
Yes, man. That's my my monitor. Let me see. I very rarely. Oh, here it is. Is that better? Is that better?
Yeah, it's a little better.
Okay. All right. So head coverings. Let me move this portion down. If I can move this down. Why it's not letting me manipulate it? Because of the size. Let's close that. There we go. All right. So here you see where it says head coverings. It says, "Now I praise you, brethren, that you remember me in all things and to keep the traditions." What did he just say? Keep the what? Torah. What did he say there for context?
Traditions.
There you go. Did he say Torah or law?
Nope. He said
there's words for that. There's words for that in the Greek. Paul could have simply said that, but he says the word traditions. Paradosis. Traditions. Right? Or paradosis. You can see over here, tradition. That which is handed down, particularly teaching handed down from one teacher to his disciples. So Paul had a teacher. You know who his teacher was? Before he that road to Damascus, who was his teacher according to the scripture? It begins with a G. Let me see if your audience knows this. They should know this. Let me see if they know.
They know it.
Let me see somebody put it here, because we're gonna get into this. Again, we're talking about tradition. The text tells you the context. Tradition. Yep. He didn't say law. He didn't say this is what God told me, Almighty, and I'm telling y'all. He says a tradition. Why? Because traditions help keep order, help keep structure. And traditions are things that are common by cultures. And the traditions are the wealth of knowledge of trials and errors, do's and don'ts, good and bad, success and failures that they maintain. And these traditions is based on resolving a societal ill in the community. So yes, so Coco Tawaki Taylor, Gamaliel, right? So Gamaliel is the teacher of Paul or Shaul. He's his teacher. So there's traditions that he heard either from his master teacher, who we just mentioned before he encountered Christ on the road to Damascus, but also there was other disciples that was sharing stuff with Paul too. Paul learned stuff from other disciples before he even set up the called out congregation in Corinth. So the interesting thing is he's taking traditions and he has to use the traditions because sometimes traditions is helpful for maintaining order. Now, there's traditions that I have in my family, and it's designed because some grandfather, great grandfather of my family, had created tradition because he saw some kind of societal ill that was happening amongst the family or community, and he created a tradition in order to protect the family. Right? Does that mean that if I don't do it, I'm gonna die? Something gonna happen to me? No, but it's best practices. I could do a job as best as I know how to. However, there are SOPs, right? Which is standard operating procedures that are designed to teach you the best practices in order to do the most proficient job possible. And that's what traditions are designed to do. They're not mandatory. So I just want to make sure we understand this. They're not mandatory. So hopefully people are getting this. So you follow me already, sis, right? And I didn't even get into nothing else.
Yep, I got you.
All right, cool. So it says the traditions, right? Just as I deliver them to you. But I want you to know that the head of every man is Christ. The head of a woman is what? Who's the head of the woman?
The husband.
Is man, right? Mm-hmm. So remember I told you, going through these words, right? You have the word here for woman. The word here for woman is what? Gynaikos or gynaikos. There's no word for wife. You know, the head of the wife is the husband. It's not there. That's important, sis. You gotta understand that, because people will tell you these things, but they gotta understand context. So the head of a woman is man, and the head of Christ is God, right? Every man praying or prophesying, having head covered. Now, anytime you see his there or any word that's italicized, it's not in the original manuscript. So they had to add that in the English to make it make sense. In this case, his is a genitive pronoun. It's a possessive pronoun. It shows possession, right? Having his head covered dishonors his head. Well, what do you mean his head covered? Well, what's man's head? What's the head of man?
Christ.
So when you cover Christ, so it's not revealed, then you are doing what? You are dishonoring your head. So coverings at that time in religious settings, covering sometimes meant certain things. Like we're going to see here where it talks about the angels later on in here, where it says because of the angels. What the heck does that mean? How you just throw angels in there, Paul? Well, you got to understand what was going on in Corinth. These traditions that Paul's talking about are Jewish traditions that was practiced in Corinth. And these were customs because Corinth had a mixed body of believers there. So he wanted to give a tradition that was to initiate uniformity in this congregation, because Corinth gave him a lot of problems. Corinth had a lot of issues at that place, right? A lot of problems. And the only problems we know about is the ones that Paul responds to. He probably got a whole bunch more, right? Even some he didn't even get because he probably died and they still sending him letters. You know what I'm saying? Because there's so many problems there, right? But the key thing here, it says, every man praying or prophesying, having head covered, dishonors his head. So sometimes what happens is there will be a tradition. I'm going to show you a help, because over here on the left is a pastor's guide that gives you different resources to help you to understand what's going on here in the text. Underneath it, this portion right here, I don't know if you see my mouse, where it says surface, MSS, TRL, lemma TRL, MORPH, which is morphology. This is getting into the language to kind of see what's going on. And then there's a Strong's there at the bottom, right? So having his head covered. So you're doing something to your head. So it's like, okay, is this means a literal head or this means Christ? Well, it's saying head. So it's saying having his head covered. So in this case, it could be referring to an external covering because it's referring to the first portion or something that's physical. And the second one is something that's spiritual. He dishonors his head. So it could be a physical covering. Check it out. And then it can also dishonor his head, which is Christ. But let's keep reading for more context, and I'll start to bring a little bit more out. But every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head, because who's her head? The first head is physical. The second head is spiritual. Her head is the husband, or in this case, it doesn't even say husband because that word is not there for husband, but you can say it for context, right? Her head dishonors her head, for that is one and the same as if her head were shaved. Now, women that had short hair, shaved hair down or bald head was not desirable during this period of time. First century CE, Corinth. It was looked down upon. Okay. Unfortunately, it's to each his own today. Women cut their hair today, and it's acceptable, right? It's a different culture where that's okay now, whereas back then it was very stigmatized for women not to have hair, right? Because we're going to continue to read what that means, because there were certain things that symbolize other things. We'll keep reading, right? But every woman who prays or prophecies where her head uncovered dishonors her head, for that is one and the same as if her head was shaved, because back then that just was something that was taboo. Women don't shave their head. For if a woman is not covered, let her also be shorn, right? So if she's not covered, shorn means to be cut, right? But if it is shameful for a woman to be shorn or covered, now the key thing is, but if is always conditional, and that's based on the common customs of the region. What is the common custom of the region? Is it okay for women to have their hair cut or shave short hair, or if it's not? Or this is a tradition. He's telling y'all, keep this in mind. This is in the tradition. It's predicated on the common customs of the region. So that means we have to go back to first century CE, Corinth, and understand the culture. How did they perceive hair, head coverings on women? Head coverings, long hair. So Paul is giving you tradition as the best practice based on the common customs of the region to keep uniformity. Corinth was all about division. Keep this in mind. Nothing but beef and back and forth in Corinth. And if you read any New Testament survey of the New Testament, which is an introduction to New Testament, they typically give it to you in theology school or seminaries or whatever. It gives you a background of everything that's going on in this region before you read the text. So you have an understanding before you get into the scriptures. So if you understand that Paul is dealing with people who are divided by their traditions, what they believe is right. Some of them think, praying is better, prophesying is better than praying, or this and that. He's like, y'all are bugging out here. So it says, for a man indeed ought not to cover his head, since he is what? The image and glory of God. But woman is the glory of man, for man is not from woman, but woman from man. And if you understand Paul's theology, Paul was very I'm trying to be nice about this. He was very chauvinistic. And I'm not saying that as a negative charge against Paul. I'm just saying when this is looked at as far as the way he writes, Paul is very chauvinistic. He is. I don't think he does it intentionally. I think he writes like that because order. Men are good with initiating order, right? And structure. And then the women are shows you how to navigate within that order and structure. That's what the woman's strength is. That's why women have intuition and stuff like that. So Paul saw places in disarray, and typically, especially in Corinth, the Corinthian letters, the women were out of line. Right? Just why he says women should keep silent in churches. Well, he's talking about those particular gatherings. It wasn't just one congregation in Corinth, because they didn't have a physical building. Yeah. Why? Because they were being persecuted. There was different congregations all over the place. So he's writing to the body of these congregations. That's why he says, well, if it's shameful to do this, because in this region it may, but in this region it may not be. It's a tradition, right? And he's giving you an entire theology behind a tradition to get you to understand. So in certain areas, having your head cut short, you should have it covered. When a woman has long hair, it's believed that that's her glory. And that also symbolizes that she is covered by her head, which is the man. The man should not cover his head when he prays or prophesies. And again, when you learn about the Sibyls of the Grecian realm and stuff like that, it's fascinating stuff when you understand the culture in regards to how to get access to the divine and stuff like that. Paul's actually blending traditions here, right? It's not one main tradition. That's why he's never saying, the Lord told me to tell y'all this, because he's using traditions to create order within his body. So this is what this is talking about. This is not law. Nowhere does Paul say, the Lord told me to tell y'all this. Nowhere does Paul say, well, the law says. Paul doesn't say any of that. He says the traditions. Please don't fight and argue over this stuff, family, when this is merely traditions.
Correct.
And it's open to interpretation. And I would go into it further with you, sis, but it requires reading a lot of background resources to understand what was going on in Corinth at that time. Because once you understand that, you know, oh, that's why Paul said, if it's shameful. oh, that's why Paul said this and said that. So he took a theological approach and weaved it into a tradition in order to enact order within the church of Corinth or the congregation of Corinth. So this is all optional. This is not mandatory. So please don't let nobody tell you that, because all you got to do is start in verse 2 and says tradition and say, why does that say tradition? Paul knows the word for law is nomos. Paul, the word is there. He uses it within Corinth, the book of Corinthians. He doesn't use it here.
That's interesting.
Corinthians, yep. And Corinthians also, remember, he talks about marriage. And he says, this is from the Lord tells me to tell y'all. And he tells you about things to do within a marriage, right? Then he says, but this is not from the Lord, but from me. And I'm saying, so Paul is very particular. He knows what he's saying. He's just not going to say something by accident. He knows that, okay, the traditions that I've learned from traveling and going, hey, in your region, some may regard women with a head that's shorn or shaven to be dishonor or shameful. Put something on your head to cover when you pray or prophesy. So you cannot be a stumbling block. Okay. Oh, y'all over here. Okay, cool. Well, you're subscribed to women having long hair as being her head covering. The hair being her head covering, because that's what it was. The hair was your head covering. When it's shaved or shorn, you got to put something additional on top of it. That was part of the traditions back then, right? But it's not law. You won't find this in the Torah anywhere.
Wow, that was great information. I just passed the link for anyone that has questions. I know that some people earlier said they had questions. So you are welcome to come up, and if you have any questions, hop up here and I'll bring you on. But that's very interesting. The fact that you were able to break down the traditions, and when you look at women, and that's another thing when it talks about women should be silent in the assembly when it comes to when they come together. And I said, what is the history behind it? And I had to answer that question back during my Berean time, because just like there's a lot of misogyny within our community, is some in the Christian community. And I had to do some research because I had to kind of talk about that with Berean and all of them. It was an interesting combo. And I said, you got to realize at that time, the history, what was going on that's not visible in the Bible. You're dealing in a time that you had the temple. And most of those pagan temples, the women were the priestesses. And they would come into the assemblies with their husband and be disruptive.
Wait, sis, you got to slow that down. That's fire. At Corinth, there was a temple to Aphrodite.
Yes.
They had sacred prostitutes.
Yes.
Okay? And sacred prostitutes pushed the form of feminism because they used sex for power and domination over men. And whenever men gave an exchange of money, it showed that woman was able to dominate him. But it was a form of cleansing. When you go into the cultures, it's very interesting. Because Afro is, today, Afro means our hair grows out. It really refers to this foam that developed when the semen of Zeus was spewed into the sea, and that foam created Aphrodite.
Wow.
Syntax of words, and she grew from out of that, out of I'm trying to find a nice way of saying it, almost like Onan, when Onan did what he did and spilled the seed. Well, Zeus' seed was spilled so it wouldn't germinate into the goddess he was mating with, because Zeus was trying to kill his offspring because he got a prophecy that one of them was going to defeat him in the future. So she happened to be the spilled seed of a consummation that should have taken place, because the mother did not want Zeus to destroy her child. So she became some kind of bastard child or whatever that developed from the sea. But nonetheless, she developed to be the goddess of love. The word eros is attached really to Aphrodite. Eros means sensual type of intimacy, right? And that became attached to Aphrodite. Actually, there's a book called Hesiod's Theogony. And in Hesiod's Theogony, he tells you the origin of almost all the gods in ancient Greece that he knew of at the time, and it's written about 7th or 8th century BCE. And then he gives you a lot of that information in regards to these ancient deities and how their original backstories have influenced human affairs. And this is the stuff that Paul was dealing with, right? He was dealing with people who were heavily dogmatic in Greco-Roman culture and bringing it into this congregation and disrupting order. So the women of that region knew that they had some kind of authority and power. They came in there and they was doing the same thing.
Correct.
So go ahead, sis, you got it. You on top of it.
No, that, and when I had to do that, it was because it was also at the temple of Diana. It changed throughout time. But it was but when I read it, I was like, wow. So put things into context to understand that, because my biggest question when I read that back in the day, I was like,
Oh wait, I'm sorry, sis. Y'all right in the chat. You're right. You're correct. It was Chronos. I'm sorry. You're correct. Go ahead, sis.
but I said, how is it he wanted women to be silent when he had Phoebe? People forget about Phoebe. Um, how is she a deacon if he didn't put her in place to kind of help? You know, you have people throughout the Bible that were women that had a very prominent role. You know, you take away Deborah, let's take Huldah out of the factor. You know, I said these were great women of the Old Testament. And then when you get into the New Testament, people debate that is Junah a woman or is Junah a man? And based off some of the research, the way her name is spelled is feminine. That means a woman, Apostle Junah. I don't know if you agree with that, but I mean, when I read it, I was like, wow, that's interesting. So why would Paul tell the women to be silent if he was surrounded by women? You have the I think it was Philip's daughters, the prophets. Was it Philip's daughters that he went to see? I mean, you had too many women that were around, and I'm like, wow, what was really going on? And when I did that research, I was like, that's the problem. It was paganism and the women in the pagan church or the temple at that time being disrupted. Going in because some of the men in the church were married to the women. They would come in and cut up. So he was like, look, everybody, look, woman, be quiet. If you have a question, ask your husband, because they were being disruptive.
You're correct. There you go. I'm sorry. Let me zoom in. Y'all confusing me. It is Zeus. I know I was right. Hold on. Let me show you the source. They over here. I love when they check me because they keep me in order. I love that. Make sure they're writing. So see here. This is Hesiod's Theogony from Near Eastern creation myth to paradise. It says Zeus and Dione, which you said Diana, are the parents of Aphrodite, and this has come from Hesiod himself, which is a primary source of this information. Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to fact check because I know they tried to fact check me, but I got you. But then I yielded. But anyway, so Kronos is the father of Zeus. Just so y'all know, Kronos also is where we get the word chronology from. Kronos means time. He was the father of time. But then it was daughters of fate and all those other stuff. It's very interesting stuff. So yeah, the key thing is to understand the culture, because the culture gives you the keys to unlock the things you read in the text. Now, here's the Bible that I recommend y'all to read, and anybody there, you can jump in at any time. You know, Sister E and me is very reasonable, right? We're not going to bite your head off, but let you talk with build. That's why I love Sister E, because you know she can get ruthless if she needs to. If you turn up, you know, like Cherry, excuse me. If you push buttons, you know, then you know sometimes Sister E will respond and go tis tis tis. But for the most part, we're open for a build, right? So if anybody has any insight that you want to share, because look, all of this is collective knowledge. I don't know everything. He doesn't know everything. We talk. We have these. Just like y'all checking me in the chat. That's excellent, because that's how we learn. I'm okay. I never lose in a discussion or debate because I'm always a student first. So as long as I learn something, I always win, right? Yeah. But I'm willing to yield if I'm wrong. Just like when I say Chronos, I had to think. I said maybe they're right. Yeah, you're right. I had to go back and check the source. So wait a second. And the source tells me specifically that no, I was right initially, but I yielded to what they said in the chat. No problem. But here's a book that I'm also recommending to you, Sister E. What I would love to do is gift you with this book if you're okay with receiving that. I can have it. Yeah, so a physical book. Let me get you the physical one. Okay. Here's right here. I'm gonna show it to you on my screen. All of the rest of y'all can buy it on Amazon, or I got the digital version from Kindle, and then I got a physical NIV version. But I'm gonna show it to you. This is one of my favorite Bibles, and one of the Bibles that I recommend everybody to get, because it goes into a lot of this cultural stuff with the things that we're talking about. All right, I'm gonna share my screen real quick, sis. It's right here. Let me know when you can see it.
All right, here we go.
All right, these are all the books that I got in my Kindle library. I have hundreds of books in my Kindle library. All right. So let me show you this one right quick. This is the Cultural Background Study Bible. Okay. Oh, wow. All right. So in this, let me show you the cover of it so you can see it. This is what it looks like. Hopefully it's not too small. Can you see it?
Yep, I can see it.
All right. It says, bringing to life the ancient world scripture. They have a NIV version, an NKJV version, and an RSV version, right? Revised Standard Version, which is RSV, the NKG, which is the New King James Version, and the NIV, which is the New International Version. Okay, and in here, I want to show you some of the resources that they have in here, right? So I'm gonna go to this is all the preface. Another good professor that talks about culture that I highly recommend. He's a Christian. Now, look, there's a lot of Christian authors and professors and experts out there that I follow because they have some good information. We don't, unfortunately, because we're a new community, we are behind in regards to the collation of data that pertains to our community. Like we're behind on that, right? And this awakening, emergence, we're just now gathering, collecting information and understandings and trying to put it together. And this is why we're so divisive in the beginning, because it takes years to meet this stuff out. It takes time, right? Other communities have done it. They've all been able to establish their orthodoxy. We don't have orthodoxy in the Israelite community, right? And that's problematic because we don't have what's called a systematic theology established in our community, because that helps keeps things cohesive and coherent as one thread going through an entire tapestry of fabric. We don't have that, right? We're all over the place here and all over the place here, and having all these arguments and discussions, debates, and there's no centralized orthodoxy in the Israelite community, right? And that will take some time to establish, but we first have to create institutions in order to have these type of discussion debates from people who are well regarded in our communities, and then create curriculums that can help us keep a degree of orthodoxy and coherence as we're teaching information based on our culture, right? Yep. So here, if you look on this, it gives you date and author of the book of Genesis, literary setting, right? Key concepts to keep in mind. And then as we're looking through it, you see all of these little footnotes, A, B, C, 1D. These all refer to other little footnotes and, little messages on certain things. But the key thing is here, looking at something like right here, the firmament and waters above. When you click this right here, this gives you information in regards to like a breakout panel. Let me see if I can get a breakout panel here for y'all. Let's see if I can get one. Here. So here, let me see if I can find it. Give me a second. That's rest. Index of articles in canonical order. Let's go to creation and existence. I should really go to Corinthians and show you really what's going on there. Let me get a good breakout. So this one goes into creation and existence. If creation is the act of bringing something into existence, we must ask what constituted existence in the ancient world. And our culture, we consider existence to be either material, having molecules taking up space and extending to energy and subatomic particles, or experiential, i.e. abstraction such as love or time. These definitions, however, are culturally determined. By contrast, in the ancient world, some things existed when it had a function, a role to play. In Mesopotamia, one way to accomplish this was to name something, because a name designated a thing's function or role. Thus, in the Babylonian creation account, bringing the cosmos into existence begins when on high no name was given in heaven, nor below was a netherworld called by name, when no gods at all had been brought forth, none called by names, none destinies ordained. Then were the gods formed. And that's when you have Tiamat, which is the feminine goddess. That's the most ancient of deities in Babylon, and Apsu, which is the male counterpart of Tiamat. And they existed, but there was no real material world at that time. They came together, they produced offspring, one of them being Marduk, who's responsible for slaying Tiamat. He was considered the storm god, almost like Baal is in Ugarit. Right, and how Yod-Heh-Wav is considered a storm deity in the Psalms. This is very interesting stuff when you see it here. He's the cloud rider. He's responsible for the lightning strikes. All of that's in the Psalms about the Most High, because the storm rider was the valiant hero or the patron deity of cultures during that time. So anytime a dominant culture was in existence, their chief deity was the storm deity, was the deity responsible for bringing rain, which the Most High said he promises if the Israelites go into the land and keep the statutes, laws, and commandments, that he would give them rain in its season, because he's the storm god. That's what he's responsible for. But the mistake is when you don't understand the creator deity, who is omnipotent, omnipotent, because in other cultures, their deities had limitations. Israelite culture, our deity has no limitations. The reason why they attributed to him the title of a storm deity is a means of disrespecting the other cultures who thought that their God was more powerful than theirs, than the Israelites. That's why the psalmist always brags and bigs up and praises their deity above all the other gods, because it's a way of showing that they are the dominant force in that region, right? So learning some background is good. And this Bible, when you get the look at the Bible, it has charts, it has images in it. Like this is Egyptian iconography. The sky is represented by the goddess Nut, whose body arch over the land, his Nut, and you have Geb underneath, and then you have the other deities over here. This is the sun god, the falcon, that's Horus or Heru, and then you can see all the Medu Neter that's over here intertwined in here that also represents or explains to you what's going on in this actual relief here. And that's what this Bible does. It gives you all of these images. It talks about what's the dry land. Why was things separated? You know, why was the waters from the water separated? What did Mayim? Because Mayim in Hebrew is a dual plural. How is waters represented by two things? A dual plural, such as Mitzrayim. Anytime you hear Ayim, that's a dual plural. Egypt had a north and south. North Egypt, South Egypt, right? They're the two lands, right? Waters, or the word waters in Hebrew is Mayim, but it's a dual plural. Dual plural means two, plural means more than two, and singular means one. But waters is dual plural. You know why? Because waters itself is not just representing an Israelite culture, just what we see in the oceans. It's representing the water that is unseen in the heavens, or Shamayim. Also, Ayim for heavens is also dual plural. Deep when you learn the language. But then you have resources like this that start to bring these things to light to get you to better understand the culture and then look into it further, do more research, and discover what's really going on. Okay. So please, if you can get that Bible, I'm gonna send it to my sister so she can grab it, she can get into it, and we can go from there.
Thank you. I got an echo.
Inbox me your shipping information, sis, when we're done.
Okay, cool. All right, so we have Jermaine up here. So you have a question for us, Jermaine?
Shalom, Sister E. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Shalom, Divine.
Shalom. What's going on, King?
I can't call it, man. Well, yeah, I can call it the Most High. That's what's going on. But my question, I put it in the chat earlier because I think I asked you about this before. I inboxed you one time about this on Facebook, and I think I asked you about it before, about casting lots. And the reason why is I see it as a means, like in Christianity and the churches, everybody hears something from the Most High. God called me to, preach, and God called me to do this, and God called me to do that. So when I read the scripture and I see how in ancient Israel they use lots, like for instance, the Most High told Moshe that Joshua, he's going to take your place. But he also said, even though I'm telling you that, you still got to take him to the Urim and before the people. You see what I mean? And so I see it as a means of, so that way nobody can say, well, Moses, you just chose him because, he was by your side all the time and, you like him and that's why you chose him. So I see it as like a means for it to be proof that this is the Most High's choice. And I see they use it on a lot of other things. So my question to you is how do you think it would be beneficial? And then when you go to when you go to the New Testament, they cast lots to get the guy to replace Judas, right? David cast lots for each gate that the gatekeepers are going to be at, the singer, so forth. So I see it as a way to choose leadership, a way to choose ministry, who's going to be doing what within the body type of deal. So that's my question to you. My question to you is, because I don't hear many people talk about it. And you were kind of the only one, but you didn't really talk about it that much. So how integral was that to ancient Israel's culture? And how can it be used today? And with that, that's my question for you, brother.
All right, I got you, King. I know what you're talking about. I was just looking up the video. You know, I actually did a whole video on that. You probably did not see that, but I'll put it in here for reference, just so you can kind of take a look where I actually demonstrated it. I don't know if
I saw you demonstrate it. You sent me a link to the video, but I mean, I was looking for a lecture.
Oh, you wanted a full-blown lecture?
Yeah, I wanted it. Yeah, I wanted you to get into the aspects of it and how it could be used to help us today, so we can get out of that. This is my thought. In Israel, we have all the different problems we have because there's people just like in church in Israel, they're putting themselves in positions that maybe they shouldn't be in. You know what I mean? People are putting themselves in spots they shouldn't be in. And so therefore, we're not getting the maximum result that we could get if they were in the position that they're supposed to be in. You feel what I'm saying?
I got you. So I'll touch on that a little bit. And thank you for the question, my brother. You're very attentive and meticulous. And I love the questions that you ask, right? Because you do a lot of good study. So I really genuinely appreciate that. So what I did was I put the link in the chat. If anybody else wants to see the video that we're referencing, it's there. If you want to take a look at me actually casting the lots and talking about it a little bit. It's only a 14-minute video. But the key thing about lots is I've had Israelites argue with me about lots. And then I bring them to the New Testament and I say, well, if this is something that we shouldn't be doing, then why did they cast lots after they prayed? They prayed first. Okay, God, we need to know who's going to be. Then they cast lots. I mean, wait, what? Wait, you prayed already. So what you cast? Oh, because when you pray, you're invoking the presence of Yah to be the person responsible or the entity responsible for the actual lot that's cast. Like whatever's cast, the prayer is to invoke Yah to get involved with the action. And now when it's done, they can say, oh, okay, we know it's a divine because it's not my opinion, your opinion. When you cast lots, it has nothing to do with me and you. It's independent of us. It's a divine thing when you invoke the deity to get involved, right? So Sister E, can you share my screen real quick? I want to bring up Proverbs chapter 16, verse 33. It says, the lot is cast in the lap, but every decision is from who? From the Most High. So the lot is cast, but he makes a decision from how the lots are cast. That's important, okay? But again, we're still using the Bible Hub, right? If you scroll down over to the right, you have cross references. Acts chapter 126, it says, then they cast lots. What you mean then? What happened before that? Well, they were praying. They prayed, and then they cast lots. Then if you go here, Joshua 7 and 14, it says, then the tribe that the Most High selects as a clan, that clan that he selects shall come forward, family by family, and a family that the Most High selects shall come forward man by man. That was done by lots. 1 Samuel 10 and 19, but today you have rejected the Most High who saved you from affliction and said to him, no, said the king over. Now therefore present yourselves before the Most High by your tribes and clans. That was done by lots. He is slow to anger, as bad as a warrior. He controls his temper, is greater than one who captures the city. Not really much so by lots, but 1818 is casting the lot. Does what? And quarrels and separate strong opponents. What the brother was saying is that sometimes people are butting heads about who should do what. And at some point, you have to let the Most High intervene. But if everybody claims to have the Holy Spirit, how do you know who the Most High is speaking through? So the lot, when it's cast, it doesn't care about your feelings, right? Whatever's done is outside of your will. It's the will of divine when you enter divine in. So when you cast a lot, if you have a beef with somebody and you're trying to settle something, cast a lot over things and see what decision comes out of that. It's designed to ensure that things are done fairly, right? When no one person has control over the lot, the divine has control over the lot. So lots was something that was part of Israelite culture from a long time ago, all the way up into the New Testament. It didn't go anywhere, right? So yes, the brother's absolutely right. This is a way for us to quell disputes in ministry, in congregations, right? In camps by casting lots. Okay. So that's important. So yes, I agree with the brother. Proverbs 16:33, Proverbs 18 and 18, the best scriptures that talk about it. But like he says, we also see it in context in Acts chapter 1. We see it in context with in Samuel, book of Samuel with David. We see it in context in Torah. We see it in context all over the place. And I believe that casting lots is a tradition from our culture that we should still implement today. Because if we do it properly, it will fix a lot of amongst people who are disputing in ministry and in congregations. Now, what those lots look like, the Urim and Thummim that he spoke about, those are two separate lots, even though Im means masculine plural. Sometimes scholars say it wasn't plural items, or it may have been plural items. They don't know because we really don't have no images of what these things look like. But it was in the breastplate or behind the breastplate in the coat of the high priest, and he will pull on a string and it will reveal one of those lots, right? And that will be a decision from the Most High. But then it wasn't just for the priests. What we're reading here are common lots that the people utilized outside of the priesthood, right? So it's my subscription that we should implement some of these customs from our culture because it helps to solve problems. Remember, your cultural paradigm is only as good as the problems, societal ills that it can resolve. If you have a cultural paradigm and all it's doing is causing problems, something's wrong. If you got a religion and all it's causing problems, something is wrong. It is supposed to fix problems, right? So a lot of times when we fail to implement things that our ancestors had come up with by means of Yah, because it's in his word, and we refuse to implement it, we're causing more harm than good.
Great question. The plumber, that's his nickname. Any other questions? Anyone else? Come on up. I'm gonna give y'all a few more minutes to get up here. If not, we're gonna go ahead and close
out. Yep.
This was a great conversation. Ron, I would love for you to come up anytime you want to come up. They've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it. If y'all, I know everybody here is subscribed to Kingdom Harbinger's page.
They might not be, but if you're not, please subscribe. And also, if you're coming here from my channel or my social media, please subscribe to Sista E.
Thank you.
All right, Sista E is the more laid back version of me. And she still can turn up, you know what I'm saying? And she's good. She's good with the sisters, you know what I'm saying? Really good with the sisters. I do well with the men, and just us working together, because what we're doing here is ministry, right? We're here to serve the community, right? Every time Sista E comes on here, she talks about a lot of current events and stuff like that. She's here to serve y'all. She doesn't have to do this, right? I don't have to do this, right? But the Most High called us to serve. And in order to be a leader, you must be the chief servant, okay? And that is extremely important. So yes, please subscribe if you haven't. I appreciate that. If y'all are here for mine, please subscribe to Sista E. Sista E, do you have Patreon?
Yes, I do. I have a Patreon as well, and it's the Sista E Patreon. It's just, you type in Sista E, SISTA E, you'll get to my Patreon. Let me put your link in here as well, because a few people asked for your link. For
yes.
Your,
also, if it's okay with you, Sista E, I'd like to share one last thing.
Please share.
On my screen, it's just for those of you who are in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, I will be there this weekend. We're having a Kingdom Harbinger Ministries chapter launch. I know I missed Sista E when I was in Virginia, but we'll be back in Virginia soon.
Okay.
But I'll be in the Raleigh-Durham area this weekend. If anybody's interested, you can come out. You can learn about what my ministry, Kingdom Harbinger Ministries, is about. You get to meet my executive staff. You get to meet our local members that are there in the Raleigh chapter, and you get to fellowship with us, network with us. We discuss strategies on how to take Torah culture and turn it into viable solutions for our immediate community. And we create a network within that locale, right? We also serving free food, because you can't beat free food. There's no admission to the event. It's free food. So we're pretty much giving you stuff. You know what I'm saying? So you have nothing to lose by coming out, but please come out, support our Israelite family of the good works that we're attempting to do in that region. And please come to us if you're in the Raleigh-Durham area, or even in the surrounding areas. Maybe you might be in High Point or Greensboro, or even in Charlotte if you want to drive. That's a long drive, but if you want to drive, we're open to all of y'all. Find out what we're about, the things we're doing in the community, and how you can get involved. Okay. So they said when. So it's on the flyer. It's Saturday, June 26th is the date, which is this Saturday at 6 p.m. And it's going to be at the Embassy Suites at Crabtree, which is north of Raleigh, north of downtown. Embassy Suites at Raleigh Crabtree. All right. And I can zoom in real quick. And what you can do is in the replay, go back and just freeze the screen and you can get the details. Right. I'm going to zoom in real quick so you can see it. Let's see. There we go. All right. And here it is right here. All right. So y'all can freeze the screen, go back. And again, if you're available in the Raleigh-Durham area this Saturday, please come out at 6 p.m. at Embassy Suites at Raleigh Crabtree, which is 4700 Creedmoor Road, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27612, and fellowship with your brothers and sisters in the area that's looking to implement Torah to fix the problems in the city. Why? Because Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 7 says, seek the peace of the city. Now, this was instructions that Jeremiah gave to the exiles in Babylon. And he said to them, seek the peace of the city and intercede on its behalf to Yah, for in its peace, you shall have peace. You know why we don't have peace in these inner cities with all this crime and drugs? Because y'all not getting involved. That's why. Y'all are not getting involved. The more Israelites in the city, the less crime, the less violence, the less ungodliness, the less unrighteousness should be occurring in that city. We should be getting involved to ensure that there's shalom. That's the word for the Hebrew word. Shalom is in our cities. It's our responsibility. We can't wait on the government. We can't wait on the police. We can't wait on our neighbors who's outside of the Israelite community. We have to do it ourselves. And if you don't know how to start, then you can partner with us, KHM, and we can give you the impetus on how you can get things started in your community to implement Torah culture, to solve societal ills, and diminish all the disarray so that way you and your children can rest there in peace.
We have another question coming. Hold on. All right. Or either okay.
Shalom, everybody. Sorry I'm at work, so have to jump on real quick and get this question in. And I hang up and listen. Oops. Are you still there?
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear.
Oh, okay. In First Chronicles chapter 2, well, first I guess I should ask how. I was under the belief that our seed comes, our heritage comes through the man, or we are Israelites because we are what our fathers is. Is that correct?
For the most part. If we go into Leviticus, something interesting there, but for the most part, yes. Now, the reason why that was the case, you may have to mute your mic, my brother, because I hear some feedback. Okay. So I'll comment on that real quick so you can get your question out. The reason why that's in the case, because by the time we're reading Chronicles, a lot of the Israelites have already started to go into captivity, right? The northern tribe was already gone, and the southern tribe was already subjugated to Babylon. What happens is anytime you are a vassal entity or a vassal state under an empire, you have to give a record of all of the men that are in your clans, tribes, community, etc. Why? Because if for whatever reason you decided to rise up, right, they need to know how many men we have to kill. Okay, that's number one. Number two, whenever an empire takes over and you're a vassal, you have land relegated to you. And the land is only, the deed is only in the name of the male. The male's responsible for overseeing that plot of land. So recording names and genealogies goes to show, oh shoot. No. I think y'all could probably still hear me. My camera went off. You can still hear me, Sister E?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay, hold on. I forgot I was still on battery. Let's see if it stays on. Okay.
Okay, you're back.
You see me? Okay. All right. So then there was land deeds, and the man was responsible for maintaining those land deeds and to show inheritance through the son of who is the next in line to take possession of that land. So that's why chronologies and keeping a record is important, right? And also when you learn about the role of sons, I'm gonna show you this real quick. It's a book called Bedouin Culture in the Bible. Okay. If you have a moment, Sister E, can I get like 2 minutes? I just want to show this book real quick.
No, you're good. You're good. Go ahead.
Okay. So it's a book that you guys can get as well. If you want it, just email me and I can send it to you. It's called Bedouin Culture in the Bible, and it talks about the importance of sons, right? This is important, right? Oh. All right, and I'm gonna share my screen. All right, let me know when you can see it. Let me zoom in. Okay, can you see, Sister E?
I can see it.
Okay, so the importance of sons. Although sons are preferred to daughters in many of the world's cultures, this phenomenon among Bedouin has its own justifications. Now, for background about this book, the author lived amongst these Bedouin tribes for a long period of time, years and years. And these Bedouin tribes maintain a lot of the traditions that and customs and mannerisms that's still in the land of Israel today, that is not mentioned by religion, but are the things that the Israelites were doing when they were living as Bedouins in Israel. Okay, so a Bedouin is typically someone who's a semi-nomad. Most of the time, they're pastoralists. They use their flocks and they go from pasture to pasture in order to feed their flocks, right? And the flocks gave them sustenance in return, etc. So he lives amongst them. He researched them, and he, through their living culture, he's able to use that data to go back and interpret the Bible, because they've maintained these customs all the way since Bible times, unbroken. So here he says, while Bedouin women and girls are considered members of their father's clan, in keeping with the patrilineal determination of a clan, only males, once they have attained maturity, are full and active members able to contribute to its main role, which is what? Providing daily security to its members. Remember, I told you in Exodus chapter 12, verse 37, when they're coming out of Egypt, and there's a count of how many men, that has to do with the men that were ready to fight, because their job is to provide security. The more sons you had, the more protection you afford the women and children and those who are weak, maimed, blind, or so forth. So let's keep going. Among Bedouin, men are defined as those who can wield a sword and slaughter an animal for a guest meal, who can rescue a violated girl. Remember what the sons of Jacob did when their sister was violated? It was all those sons that went and did what? What did they do?
They went and took care of those the what is it? The husband and the soldiers.
Yes. So again, this is why sons were highly valued for protection and security, right? It says we also meet this qualification in the Bible where a lad is an active member. It's a bait ab, which can mean a house father, when he reaches the age of 20, Exodus 38 and 26. The age of 20 is when you're technically considered to be a man that can go to war. Just like here in America, it was age 17, 18, I think, when they did the draft for the Vietnam War. Think of that as being the draft. Once you hit 20 and you are of physical strength, then at any given time there's a war, you got to go and fight. That's just how it was. And the more sons, check this out, the more sons you can contribute, or male members of the household you can contribute to the war, the more spoils you get back. Right? This is really important, because their society is different than ours. Now there's other systems of protection for women in our society. So a woman can be good without a husband or a son or a father or uncle and be able to thrive in this society. They didn't have that back then. Things were completely different. We cannot take what we know in the modern world and force it on the past. We have to look at three things: the textual culture, the material culture, which are the items that's found in archaeological excavation that's left behind by the people who are writing the text, and any living cultures that still maintain those practices. This is why we say that certain Igbo tribes are Israelites, because when you parse out their customs and their mannerisms, it lines up point for point of pre-exilic Israelite customs. It's phenomenal. But it says here, at the age of 20, when you're able to bear arms, have military experience, Numbers chapter 1 and 3, 26 and 1, this confirmed by Psalms 127, 3-5, after citing sons as one of God's greatest gifts to man, their benefit is explained. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are sons born to a man in his youth. Happy is the man who fills his quiver with them. They will dispel shame as they what? Destroy their enemy. All right. Thus, since fully grown males who are able to perform the role of protectors, not only of the weak within a clan, but of one another, the more grown males a clan includes, the greater its strength and deterrent capability. That means if you decide, hey, we're going to go and raid this family's camp, and you see 30 sons come out, and you're like, oh, yeah, we'll just go find another weaker clan to do that to, a weaker tribe or family to do that to. So understanding the culture, my brother, the men were valuable because the men had the deeds to the land whenever they registered with the empire that was overseeing them, and that pretty much loaned the land back out to them. So they will use it through the man, and they will also want to know through chronology who is the next of kin to get this inheritance. However, Torah, women changed the game in Torah. You know, women changed the game as far as the inheritance laws. That was never done by anybody else. It was only females, sisters, daughters that put the case up before the Most High when the men were trying to keep them silent. And the Most High spoke to Moshe, heard their case, and did what? Gave women inheritance.
Correct.
Now, again, so we can't look at this narrow-minded. When somebody says, and I'm not saying you are, my brother, I'm just saying generally, narrow-minded to just look at things as black and white. There's a lot of gray areas in Israelite culture. And I'm going to give you a last example and let you finish your point, my brother. But for the most part, yes, but not in every case. Leviticus chapter 24. I'm going to show you something very unique in Leviticus chapter 24. And this, again, this also goes, did he drop? Is he gone?
Yeah, he dropped. Another brother coming in now.
Okay, no problem. So let's bring up the scripture, Leviticus chapter 24. And I had his First Chronicles when I was trying to see what he was getting at. I think he was going with the chronology. But Leviticus chapter 24, if you scroll down here, it says in verse 10, now the son of an what? Israelite mother and an Egyptian father went out among the Israelites, and a fight broke out in the camp between him and an Israelite. The son of the Israelite woman, now slow down here, isn't his father an Egyptian? Why is the narrator identifying him through his mother's lineage? Just said his father was an Egyptian. How come it said the son of the Egyptian man? No, the son of an Israelite woman blasphemed the name with a curse. So they brought him to Moshe. In this case, the son was identified by his mother's lineage, and she's an Israelite, not the father. The father is mentioned, but when it comes to the actual charge, they have to look at your lineage. Why? Because Gentiles and native Israelites had two different penalties for things. They didn't always have the same penalty for stuff. And people say, whoa, doesn't it say in Exodus chapter 12 that you should have one law for both? Well, that's referring to the Passover. Because did you know in Torah, there's separate laws for Gentiles? Like if there's an animal carry-on that's in the street, you know, dead animal's been ripped up. Israelites can't touch that, but they can put gloves on or put it and say, hey, Gentile, you want this?
Yeah.
During Jubilee, if you had a Hebrew servant, oh, you got to go. You have a Gentile? Oh, no, that's not for you, son. Nah, stay put. You good. You staying here. So we got to look at context. And Exodus 12 is talking about the Passover. And that's going back to the tradition of circumcision in the home of Abraham, where his entire household, including his servants, had to be circumcised, right? So when it comes to lineage and identification, it depends on the scenario. But for the most part, if it has to do with inheritance or land, it's going to go for the male unless there's no sons. Then it goes to the daughters.
Correct.
Or next of kin. So in this case, you didn't have really any male next of kin. It's just these daughters, so it goes to them. And then guess what? If they have a son, they pass that inheritance down to their son. So in a case like this, more than likely, this was the case. This is what's argued in academia, that his father was probably dead or maybe absent, or maybe she had him when they was in Egypt coming out here. So he was identified with his mother. So if his mother was to go into the land based on her father and she's own land because there's no next of kin, then the son that she has, which would have been this guy right here before he was killed, the inheritance will go to him. She's there to mediate and maintain the land to pass it down to the next of kin, which is the male, who's responsible for its beautification. He had to make sure that the land was beautified, meaning that landscaping and all that was done. Made sure that the land was protected from raids, right? From wild animals. This is a tough job, right? And also made sure he provided for anybody within his territory, provision, and made sure that he was producing on that land, whether it was children through a woman whether it was the flocks of herd or whether it's the harvest from the seeds he sown. So I got a book that goes into ancient Asian culture. It talks about inheritance, property, deeds, all of that. And it also talks about women who had property, deeds, and stuff like that. That guess what? A lot of people didn't realize that sometimes women had property and they were wealthy and they didn't have no male overseer. It all depended upon the situation. Deborah was in place because there was no male judges and the men were weak. So the Most High used a woman. That was it. So we can't do it black and white. We got to look at the context.
Yep. So we got brother Yehuda? Yeti. Okay. I'm sorry.
Yes, miss.
How are you? I've seen you a couple of times in the chat. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to start by saying all thanks and praises to the Most High.
Yes.
And I want to congratulate Dr. Prospect, Dr. Shields, on your recent doctorate degree, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and peace and love to Queen Sister E. So here's my my question. In the Hebrew community, our major problem is having a consistent gospel message. So I'm not really familiar with your gospel message, but what is your message? What do you think our message should be in the Hebrew community regarding the gospel and how we are to be reconciled to Abba Yahuwah?
Okay, excellent question. So when we say that, I don't like making it a blanket statement because, in our community, there's some people that consider themselves Torah only. So I guess this question is for our Messianic brothers and sisters, right? Is that what you're referring to, my brother?
Well, yeah. So just in reference to 2 Corinthians 5:20, it says we're to be ambassadors for Messiah, Yahusha. So in reference to that scripture specifically, how are we in the Hebrew community to be ambassadors for Christ, or more accurately, Messiah, Yahusha?
Okay, no problem. All right, so the first thing I'm going to start out by saying is that if we're going to talk about the gospel message, we can't start there, right? Because it's been preached before that was even written, right? So we have to go to what the original gospel is, because when Yeshua came on the scene, he brought out that. And it was assumed that the people understood what he was talking about. Let's go to Mark chapter 1. All right, let me bring it up on the screen. And this ties into the scripture you're talking about, my brother. All right. So this is Mark chapter 1, right? And here it is, verse 14. After John was put in, can you see my screen?
No, sir.
Sister E, there we go. All right. After John was put in prison, Yeshua went into Galilee proclaiming what? The gospel of what? Of Christ? No. He didn't proclaim the gospel of Christ. He proclaimed the good news of God, of the Most High. And he says, the time has come. What time? What is he talking about? He said, the kingdom of who? Of God has come near. What? Repent and believe the good news. So before we even get into Paul's letters, because Paul preached the gospel of Christ, that was his theological position. But Yeshua preached the gospel of the kingdom and the gospel of the kingdom of God, or the kingdom of heaven, right? It varies depending upon which synoptic gospel you're looking at, right? But before we even know anything about that, he's already come on the scene saying the time has come, which means the people already know what he's talking about. The kingdom of God has come near. Repent and believe the good news. So what is this kingdom of God? What is this good news he's talking about? And I'm saying this with you, my brothers, I'm bouncing it off for you so we can build, so you can get input as well. If you was there in the 1st century CE during the time when Yeshua was around and he just came out the blue and started saying this, how would you respond to that? Would you know what he's talking about?
Not exactly, unless it was explained.
Unless you lived in the culture,
right?
Unless you knew the history that we see in what's called the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible Tanakh, and understand what developed during the intertestamental period before this book of Mark opened up. Okay, so how would we? So that's how we have to first start. Well, what is this good news that Yeshua preached that then was picked up by his disciples and then later Paul? Well, his good news that he's talking about is a restoration of who? Zion. The restoration of Zion. That's the kingdom that's to come. Well, where do we find that at? Well, you got to find the word gospel where? in the Tanakh. It's there. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 52. I go to Isaiah chapter 52. Scroll up. All right. Let me know if y'all can see my screen.
We can.
Okay. Awake, awake, Zion. Clothe yourself with strength. Put on your garments of splendor. Jerusalem, the holy city. The uncircumcised and defiled will not enter you again. Shake off your dust. Rise up, sit enthroned, Jerusalem. Free yourself from the chains on your neck, daughter of Zion, now a captive. For this is what Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh says. You were sold for nothing, and what? Without money, you will be redeemed. Isn't this a theme or a motif that we find in the New Testament? Cephas or Peter talks about being redeemed by something more precious than money, which is the blood of the sacrifice of Yeshua. Correct? Would you agree with that, my brother?
Sounds right.
Okay, this is the gospel starting off because they're in a captive state now. They didn't need the gospel when they were sovereign in the land, but when they became into captivity because of their disobedience, now they need redemption. Now they need good news because as captives, in order for you to keep the faith, you have to know what is to come if you obey. It says, for this is what the sovereign Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh says. At first, my people went down to Egypt to live. Lately, Assyria has oppressed them. So they're talking about the northern tribes. And then Syria warred with the southern tribes when they sieged Lachish. In the Lachish relief, we saw the nappy-headed guys. We said, oh, those are Israelites, and they look like us. But then they also tried to do the same thing to Jerusalem, but Jerusalem too well fortified, right? And Jerusalem was on a high hill. It had walls. It was very difficult for them to, knock down the walls and take the city. But it says, and now what do I have here, declares Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, for my people have been taken away for nothing, and those who rule them mock, right? It says, all day long, my name is constantly blasphemed. Check this out. Yeshua says, I come in the name of who? The Father. Because everybody else blasphemed the Father's name. So the Son had to come so he could proclaim the name of the Father and do his works. This is all part of the gospel. Therefore, my people will know my name. Therefore, in that day, they will know that it is I who foretold it. Yes, it is I. How beautiful, check it out, on the mountains. Why is the mountains important? Because the mountains was always representative of the place in which man is able to meet the gods. Because the mountain peaks would pierce into the sky, into the clouds, because there's a lower layer of cumulus of clouds, and then there's other additional layers, about 6-7 layers up in the atmosphere, and it would pierce into those clouds. And anytime somebody went up into those clouds, what would happen is the air was much thinner, you would lose oxygen. So when you come back down, guess what? Your countenance would change. Well, anyway, so the mountains were important because the holy hill of Zion was the resting place of the deity. How do we know that? The Psalms tell us that. And for sake of time, I'm going to just tell you the Psalms. You can look for it, or I can post the scriptures at another time, maybe when I come back on. And it says, are the feet of those who bring the good news, those who've had an encounter with Yah, are coming to bring you a message of what's about to come. And in this case, it's Isaiah. Remember Isaiah chapter 6? Isaiah had a vision, and where was he at? In the throne room. He says, oh, I'm a man unclean lips. So, the seraph had to come and put the tongs of the coal on his lips because he volunteered to go and give the message. Isaiah was bringing the gospel to the children of Israel. If we look at how many times that Yeshua cited the Old Testament authors, he cited Psalms a lot. He cited Jeremiah. He cited Isaiah. Matter of fact, when he stands up the first time in a synagogue, he quotes from the book of Isaiah about the gospel. If you don't know the book of Isaiah, you're not going to understand the gospel. So we have to get to the precursors before we even get to the New Testament to see what Yeshua was talking about. He's talking about restoring Israel. This is why we see him say that I have not been sent to none except the lost sheep of Israel. When he sends them out in Matthew chapter 10, he says, don't go by the way of the Gentile or don't go by the way of the Samaritan, but go only to where? To the lost sheep of Israel. Because this was the message of the kingdom that they're talking about now. He's saying it's about to come, but y'all got to get ready for that. Repent and believe this good news. He's coming in the vein of the other prophets to bring this message, but not as a common man, but as the Son of the Most High God. So this is what made him more exemplary, right? It says, bring good tidings, proclaim salvation, who says to Zion, what? Your God reigns. When they're in captivity, they don't think that their God is reigning because another nation is over you and they have their gods everywhere. Why do you think when Paul was chained, he was being brought through these cities? He looked up and saw all these statues and was like, oh, look at all these gods. And he seen one of an unknown God. He said, that one I declare unto you, the one that's the creator of the heavens and earth. Because according to their theology and their theogony, the heavens and earth were material that was always here. No God can claim any kind of signature on the creation of these things. But Paul had to show them different, that the true God, he can do that. So he says, your God reigns. Listen, your watchmen lift up their voices together. They shout for joy. Watch this. When Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh returns, you know that Advent, that second Advent, this is what he's talking about. The coming kingdom of the Most High. This is the gospel. Everybody would have been familiar with Isaiah because when they go into the synagogues, Isaiah is read to them all the time. They would have known this. So when Yeshua comes out and say it, they would have known the time. He says, wait, the time, the kingdom. They said, well, we've been waiting on this the whole time. What is this guy talking about? And that's why the drove of people came out to listen to this man, because he's claiming that this is here to come. No other prophet claimed that before him, because there were other prophets like him during his time, but none claimed what he claimed. This is the good news, that if Zion repents and turns from their wicked ways, right, then they will be able to receive the kingdom. He says, when I go away, I'm going to make rooms in this mansion, because that's a house you're going to live in when the kingdom is here. It's going to be your permanent abode. That's why don't worry about what they do to your body. They kill you. They can't destroy your soul, because your soul's going to go to that mansion. Your soul's going to live on. This is the gospel message. So if we're going to bring the gospel to our people, we have to read this stuff to them. Yeshua shows you the etiquette that you need before you get to the banquet. What are you talking about? Anybody who's been in any high culture society, I've had friends that were wealthy and their parents were like, because the schools I went to, they was like blue blood or whatever. They had a lot of money. Well, I would go to their house and I would sit there and eat, and I'd be using the wrong forks and spoons. I didn't have no table etiquette because I wasn't raised that way, right? But the expectation is if you're going to sit at the table and eat, you have to know how to use that silverware. Which one is your so-and-so knife? Which one's your so-and-so fork? Which one's your soup spoon, your regular spoon? Which plate that you use for what meal? You have to know this stuff. Yeshua came to say, okay, look, I see y'all not ready for this kingdom, so let me teach you how the kingdom is. Let me give you a little sample of what the kingdom is. He healed people because in the kingdom, there's no sickness. There's no disease in the kingdom. He gave provision because in the kingdom, you have unlimited provisions. He was giving people samples of the kingdom to come. That's why he was able to do these miracles, because he's saying the time has come. And I'm showing you, just like when the Israelites went into the land to spy out, Joshua and Caleb were the only two that gave the positive report, and they came back with what? The spoils of the land, the good of the land, as a sample of what's to come when their wilderness situation is over and what they can look forward to in the land flowing of milk and honey. There's so many parallels there. So us as Israelites, the gospel we have to give is telling our people Most High's kingdom is coming. This is what it looks like. But before it gets here, you have to get right. Yeshua gave his life so that way he can give us that ticket. So when that kingdom comes, we can enter in. So we have to prepare our people, get our house in order, let them know the lineage of the gospel and how it was pervasive over time, from the time of Isaiah all the way to the time of Shaul. And as an ambassador of the kingdom to come, we go before the king or the kingdom to represent it while we're in a foreign land. That's what an ambassador does. When you go to an embassy, it has ambassadors there for the nation that's far away. That's who we are. We're to bring our people here because so much destruction has come upon them while they're in their secular communities. We have to get them bunched in with us and have them to repent, to turn from these secular ways and back unto righteousness. And if you want to know how to employ Torah in a modern day environment under captivity, Yeshua is the key. He showed us how to do that.
All right, yeah, brother, you're knowledgeable in your speech. You're so thorough in your articulations, and it didn't really exactly answer my question, because let me ask it a different way. What is your message of salvation? If an Israelite is to die tomorrow without Christ, he's not going to see his kingdom come to this earth. He or she is not going to see the kingdom come to this earth. So the gospel message should lead to salvation. What is your, how is one saved?
Salvation of what? Soteriology.
Salvation of your, to heaven, to your,
Yeah.
or to the kingdom.
So soteriology is the study of salvation. When somebody says salvation, you must define it to make sure we're on the same page. So when you say salvation, what are you referring to? You turn to the redemption of your soul after death?
Yes.
Are you referring to physical captivity, which is also promised to Israel?
Well, yeah, that's more along the lines of redemption to, you know, to our, you know, lead our second Exodus leading to, you know, our redemption, and, you know, just the whole story of redemption. You know, Israel is the centerpiece of that. But just
is redemption also salvation?
They can be not exactly, but, you know, they can be interchangeable in some sense.
How
I mean,
so?
the redeemed to heaven are saved. So I mean, there's a salvation message there.
There you go. So what I think you're saying is, you said if an Israelite brother or sister was to die tomorrow without Christ, are you asking me what's going to happen to them in the afterlife?
Well, my message, my question is, what is your message of salvation to them?
Repent.
So that they can be reconciled. Okay,
yeah.
Repent.
Turn from your wicked ways. That is nowhere in the culture that we have, the Israelite culture, because everything is there that we need. Yeshua is the one who is in the heavenly temple, who's the mediator between man and the Most High. So therefore, you must acknowledge his sacrifice and his martyrdom that allowed you to get interest into this new kingdom. And he has given his teachings on how to live that abundant life. That's what you have to do. And when you walk in the newness of life, then you will be able to be in alignment with the Most High's will. So if you were to die, then you can make it into that new Jerusalem, which we see in the book of Revelations. That's the gospel message, right?
Well, my thing is, a lot of Israelites say the gospel is the law and the prophets, and it's not just that. The law and the prophets can't save you. That's why the Messiah came. So that's just my whole thing, is we need to get the gospel message out, that you know, Messiah Yahusha is the way, the truth, and the life. So it's not just the law and the prophets that, you know, can redeem or to lead you to redemption. You have to go through Christ.
So you're saying, I get what you're saying, and I know where your perspective is now that you said that, because that showed me the line of distinction, right? So you're saying that we don't need what we call the Old Testament in regards to understanding salvation, or part of our salvation? Is that what you're saying?
No, the Old Testament, that's our culture, that's our history. It definitely gives you a better understanding of Christ, you know, of the culture. Can one be saved without reading the Old Testament? I believe yes, but they just won't have a thorough understanding of the culture.
Wait. So Yeshua's existence doesn't mean anything without the Old Testament. You're aware of that, right? Without the Old Testament,
the gospel message is in the apostles spoke the gospel message in the Old Testament. I mean, we have the gospel message with the story of Abraham and Isaac, the kinsman redeemer.
No, what about the prophecies in the Old Testament to let us know who's the right Messiah to follow? You need the Old Testament for that.
Well, in a way, yeah. As far as not being led astray to a false Messiah, yeah, that gives better understanding. But if someone just has the New Testament, the gospel message is there as far as being reconciled to Abba Yahuwah through Christ, or through Messiah Yahusha.
So
I don't think it's smart to just read. I'm not New Testament only. I'm the whole Bible. You know, I study all the scriptures, Tanakh, and, you know, the New Testament. But I'm a new covenant Hebrew. I'm a new covenant minister, Melchizedek priesthood. You know, that's all new covenant ministers or preachers should, you know, we're under the Melchizedek priesthood, so we should put Christ above culture or anything else.
So I hear what you're saying, Melchizedek priesthood. By the way, how old are you, my brother?
I'm almost 40.
Wow, you sound very young.
I don't know.
Praise the Most High.
I got young kids. That's what I was in and out of the chat. Dealing with my kiddos, so they're asleep now. But
I understand.
I don't know, it's just my West Coast lingo, I guess. I don't know.
Nah, it's cool because, you know, I'm around the same age. So, you know, I just said that to kind of get an understanding of background, right? Because that helps me to better understand who I'm speaking to. Because if you're an elder, I typically treat my elders with a degree of respect. Not that I don't treat anybody else, but I have to acknowledge when somebody's my elder. So that's why I asked you, because if you were older than me, there's a certain way that I formally address you, right? But since you're my peer, I can talk to you like my brother, right?
Well,
So
yeah,
what
exactly. I mean, you're a doctor. I respect you as such.
I mean, that to me, that title is only good to help the community. I don't really even put it out there like that, but I appreciate that respect. But I'm talking to you like my brother. None of that stuff means nothing. You're my brother right now, right? We're talking as brothers.
I hear you. What I'm speaking to is more of the knowledge.
Gotcha.
I'm an ordained minister, but I'm Holy Spirit led. I haven't been to a seminary. Actually, I just got accepted to a master's program to get it for theology, to get my master's in divinity.
Nice.
I'm not there yet with your knowledge, but like I said, I'm Holy Spirit led. And I don't want to take up too much time. I just think we need to get on the same page with the community, because the people with my point of view are rare. I shouldn't say they're rare, but they're underrepresented in the Hebrew community. So that's just my thing, is we need to still preach the gospel. The identity it definitely helps you in your walk, in your faith, but your identity can't save you. So that's my whole thing is we need to still preach the gospel.
I don't think anybody will say identity can save you. There's no salvation in how you were born. I mean, if you're ethnically Israel, that doesn't mean you're getting into the kingdom. We can see that even from what we call the Old Testament. So I hope nobody believes that. If they do, then that's serious error, right?
Well, I mean, some people take that verse out of context as far as all Israel will be saved, because you have these people on the street yelling and cursing, and they think they're going to inherit the kingdom with that attitude. I'm like, nah, the spirit, the ruach's not in you, man. You can't come at people like that and you expect, and you think you have salvation, especially over them, in a sense of just because you're Israel. It's like, nah, that's not it.
So I'll cap it off with this, because it's getting kind of late, and we could always build another time, my brother. And thank you for coming on here and representing your perspective and asking the question, because I'm open to discussions. It doesn't matter who has what perspective, right? Because like I said, I learn as well. And I think I don't really see a discrepancy in our endpoint. I just think that the way that the paths identify seems distinct. So maybe you're not familiar with my position in regards to salvation. I've done several videos on it, right? I actually have a playlist of all my teachings that I've done on the New Testament. It has maybe about almost 20 videos in it, right? So I have tons of content if you're interested in kind of checking out to see, what my perspective is on that.
We'll have to check that out.
Yeah, so one in particular that you can check out is called Capital Punishment. The Capital Punishment, Human Atonement for Sin in the Bible. And in that one, I go into salvation. Like I kind of show in other ancient cultures, that human sacrifice is utilized as a form of redeeming, the community. And I even show within Israelite culture in what's called the Old Testament that the deity always expected human sacrifice. Human sacrifice is just part of the culture, right? So Yeshua's death being accepted as a human sacrifice is not alien to the ancient Israelite culture. The problem is how people view it. That becomes problematic. So my position, like I said, I identify Yeshua as a Messiah for Israel. He's the last of the prophets, the lineage of prophets, because we get that from Hebrews chapter 1, that in diverse ways in old times that the Most High spoke through what? Through the prophets. But in these last days, he spoke to us through who? Through his son, right? So Yeshua is the final prophet to Israel, right? To even the earth. Some other people may think is Muhammad or other prophets, but he's the last prophet to those of us who are messianic, right? To the earth. He's the last mouthpiece, right? Everything that the apostles say, they speak in his vein, in his stead, right? He speaks through them via the Ruach. So with salvation, there are different types of salvation, right? In Christianity, you learn that there's 3 types of salvation, and this is taught in some seminaries, right? There's the salvation of what we call being saved from the penalty of sin, which is justification, being saved from the power of sin, which is sanctification, and being saved from the presence of sin, which is glorification, right? So those are the 3 stages of salvation according to Christianity, Orthodox Christianity. We can't focus on one because it's a process of all 3. But more particularly for Israel, it is the promise for the remnant to be restored in land. Now, when it says all Israel be saved, within the context of the book of Romans, that's not literally talking about every single person whose Israel is going to be saved, because there are Greek synecdoches in there. There's something that is a part that represents a whole, right? And that's pretty much what it is, a literary device called a synecdoche, and you can identify these things once you get into the Greek. So anybody that's saying that, they don't really understand what the text is saying, right? Paul's very clear, because even if you read other books of Paul, he tells you that some Israelites are not going to make it. Yeah, so exactly. He can't be saying that everybody's going to make it if he's saying something. So he's not contradicting himself. So my position, just so you're aware, very clear, salvation, when we talk about salvation, there's a salvation from the presence of captivity where Israel will be restored back into the land. That's part of salvation.
Yes.
Israel being restored to the land. Why? Because we see it in the book of Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible. So Israel will be restored back into the land. That's why you see a mention of the 144,000 coming from the 12 tribes, and you have the 12 gates. And with the 12 tribes, the 12 tribes is still going to be remnant from Israel being restored physically to a new Jerusalem. But that's not solely it. Secondarily, you can't get that access into the kingdom unless you are saved from your wicked ways. And the Ruach is there to enable you to have the power to be saved from the power of sin. Because sin is powerful. It's very tempting. It's very overwhelming. It's very seductive. So you need power over that. That's a form of salvation. The Spirit can save you from the power of sin. The scripture says that he that doeth righteousness, he is righteous. Him that you can't do righteousness without the Spirit. So you need to be redeemed from the power of sin by way of the Spirit. Yeshua says, when I go, I'm going to send the Parakletos, and he is going to be your comforter. He's the one that's going to lead and guide you. So you need the Spirit. Yeshua's name gives you access to the Spirit. And when you have the Spirit, that's your down payment for you to get into the kingdom and be relieved of physical captivity if you live to see the kingdom come, right? But in order to know how do we practically live out our salvation, Yeshua teaches you that in his life. Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1, follow me or imitate me as I imitate Christ. If I see any discrepancies between Paul and Christ, I got to go with Christ. If I see that, I'm saying, because Paul says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. So Christ is the example. The way he lived, the things he said, what he taught, that is our example to understand what salvation is. And all anybody else did after that was to reflect what Yeshua did. He's my central focus. All the other apostles are tertiary. What Yeshua did, that's the central focus. What he's doing now, that's the central focus. And the other voices are just there to reflect or extend what Yeshua's ministry was already is. I found salvation just by reading the Gospels. I don't even have to go into Paul, Cephas, Acts. I get salvation just by reading the Gospels. Jesus taught what salvation was. It's right there in the Gospels. Do you believe the Gospels is sufficient enough to know what salvation is? Let me ask you that, because that's a great question.
Definitely.
So if I didn't have the rest of the books of the Bible and I just had, let's say, the book of Matthew, can I find salvation simply in the book of Matthew?
Yeah, it's the gospel.
There you go. So all I'm saying, my brother, is we're not wrong, right? I just think that your perspective is one way, my perspective the other way, but it leads to the same mountain, right? Your path is going here, mine is here, because what I do is I showcase the culture of the Israelites to show how they were being prepared for redemption. There was a preparation. It didn't just happen when the New Testament opened up. They were being prepared for that. And in order to know that Yeshua is the Messiah, we need the Old Testament prophecies, because that validates him. When he was, see, look, this is why we got to look at the things he said. He said, as it is written, as it is written, as it is written. So if I don't know where it's written at, how can I validate what he's saying as it is written? You need the Old Testament, because in order to validate what Yeshua is saying and see what he's saying is the truth, if he claims to be the truth and he's making an assertion, how do we verify it? We got to be able to substantiate it. The Old Testament is there. And I have a book to give to you, my brother, if you're interested, because I always tell anybody, Christians, Israelites, whoever, who holds to Yeshua, to understand that the Old Testament is essential, critical, and crucial in order for you to understand the gospel. And I think that's where we differ. I don't think the New Testament is sufficient in itself to understand the gospel, because we need the Old Testament to verify that, because it goes back to the Old Testament. I can see if it never quoted the Old Testament, but the fact that it quotes the Old Testament, in order for us to understand that that is true, what's being said, and that it's being fulfilled, we need the Old Testament. You can't get around that. Let me show you the book that I'm talking about. It's an excellent book that goes into this to kind of bring this information to light. And I'm not saying culture saves you. You never heard me say that. I never said culture saves you, right?
No.
I never said keeping the statute of commandments rigidly and piously is going to save you, because inwardly Moses said to what? Deuteronomy chapter 10 verse 16, circumcise the foreskin of your heart and be stiff-necked no more. Circumcision of the heart didn't come in the New Testament. That's Old Testament. Immersion didn't come from the New Testament. That's Old Testament. Ezekiel chapter 11 verse 19, Ezekiel chapter 36 verse 26 and on. That's Old Testament. I'm going to sprinkle you with water and you will be clean. That is a purification ritual. He says, and I will write the law in your heart and your mind, and that way I will be your power and you will be my people. And what? I will put you back into the land. Jeremiah chapter 8:8, which is quoted in the book of Hebrews, goes back to what that new covenant is. It's there in the text. It outlines it perfectly. It keeps going back to the Old Testament.
Yeah,
so I can't use the New Testament by itself, my brother. That's why that's the only place I disagree with you. You cannot use that alone sufficient for salvation. You need the entire book.
Don't get me wrong. The Tanakh is essential for understanding, and like you mentioned, for verification. There are believers in Christ that probably never read or I don't know. There's probably some that never read the Old Testament or the Tanakh, and they have salvation through Christ. But it does give a better understanding and verify the Gospels. Is correct how I feel.
And so, my brother, if you was to give me a quote about a movie, right? And you said, oh, in this movie, so-and-so said this, and that. How would I know you telling the truth? Should I just take your word for it?
Well, it's by faith. Myself? That's how people are saved, by faith. Like I said,
what kind of faith? Blind faith?
I'm not New Testament only. I read the Tanakh. I believe in the scriptures.
Yeah, gotcha.
And I'm not going to defend being New Testament only. I think it's not wise to just read New Testament only. So you won't get me ever. You won't catch me ever saying that. But what I'm saying, my point is, there's a lot of people that are in the New Testament only. They don't go and study the history. That's why they have a problem saying the Ados are descendants of American descendants of slavery are the true Hebrews, because they don't know the culture, they don't study the history, they don't know the prophecies. So it's like besides the cognitive dissonance, it's just everything is there. They're just flat out envious and deniers.
Yeah. If you could just share my screen real quick, Sister E. I just want to give him a reference, and then I'm done. But thank you, my brother Yeti, for did I say it right? Yeti or Yeti?
Either way, Yeti like Jedi, but I say Yeti. Yeah. That's the Hebrew pronunciation.
That's cool. So my brother Yeti, I appreciate your inquiry. I think it's very insightful. I'm glad we were able to build, because like I said, as long as you establish the rules for discussion, if I say you're my brother, I'm not here to fight with you, to argue with you. We may have differences in opinion. We both are very passionate. We'll put it out there. But at the end of the day, if we ever get off screen and you was to reach out to me and say, I need something, I'm going to help you despite what our differences are. So I always try to do that as an affirmation before I have discussions, so that people who are watching don't misconstrue what's going on, and that the person I'm speaking to understands that I'm just here to reason. I'm not here to really debate and argue.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Sincere. Yeah,
definitely.
But a lot of times we don't do that. We don't set the stage before we jump into discussions, and things get, heated. So I appreciate it, my brother.
Yeah, when the spirit's right, there should be no disrespect. But I appreciate your time. I appreciate you, Sister E, for not booting me off and just hearing me out this for this period of time. I really appreciate y'all. Thank you.
All right. Any more questions? We are done. Well, I'm just pretty much done for the evening.
We got to be done, because they're gonna keep going.
I know, right? If y'all have any questions, I know he had Ron Shields has Divine Prospect, or Dr. Ron Shields has a Friday night special where he does his live. I try to at times hurry up, get done with my live so I can go and sit and listen to him. And just, go to his live and ask questions. He's going to be available to answer whatever questions you all have, and he has good teachings. So anything before we go, Dr. Ron Shields?
So the book that I have on the screen, with the brother, I completely understand his concern, and his thing is that too many Israelites are too caught up in the static nature of the Old Testament or the law that they don't completely understand salvation, right? And that we need to be balanced, right, in regards to fully understanding what salvation is. But that term salvation has to be broken down, right? So that way it's clearly understood, because a lot of times when people don't agree on the same definition, it's the source of argumentation, right? So that's why I had to ask your brother, when you say salvation, what are you talking about, right? You can mean anything. I don't know what you mean unless you tell me what you mean. So he was able to give it to me, and then I was able to share it with him, and we kind of met at a middle ground and was able to build from there. You know what I'm saying? So I'm glad that we was able to do that, and I think we should start doing that the most. Always look to see what is the common denominator that you have with people before jumping into the numerator that divides you. If you're willing to say, look, we have these bricks, let's build this together, but we have different ways on how we feel the bridge should be. Say, okay, you build your part, I build my part. And when we meet halfway, we can then appreciate each other's building, right? What each other has constructed. And it takes time and patience and not taking things personal when we have these discussions. So sometimes I have to give books to my Christian family members and friends so they can understand the Old Testament, because most of them don't understand the Old Testament because they're too hyper New Testament, right? Too hyper Christ. And when I say hyper Christ, they'll say, oh, the New Testament, we don't need that no more. I mean, the Old Testament, I'm like, what you mean? How could you, if they're quoting from it, how do you know they're even telling the truth? They could be lying to you. Matter of fact, so many people leave Christianity and the Israelite walk as messianics and go to be Torah only because they say, yo, there's discrepancies in these prophecies, yo. How do you reconcile that if you don't understand the Tanakh, if you don't understand the intertestamental period of how things develop, how this messianic stage was set when the Israelites was going into captivity? All the other works that developed during the New Testament, the Old Testament and New Testament. If you're not understanding this, then when somebody says something like that to you and you don't thoroughly know, like maybe Christian apologetics, because they have a system to refute those things, or you don't know about textual criticism, or you don't know about the themes of the Old Testament, you're going to be lost. And what's going to happen is you're going to be like, man, they stumped me, so I guess I need to throw this book away. So many people, we leave away from the New Testament more so than going from the Old Testament to the New. And the reason why is because of discrepancies. Almost every discrepancy that you see in the New Testament has an explanation for it, if you're patient enough to know what it is and have somebody walk you through it. But the problem is it has to align with the Tanakh or the Old Testament. If it is not cohesive to the Tanakh, then the New Testament cannot be validated without the Tanakh. Why? Because Jesus said prophecies. He says, I'm fulfilling this day. Well, how do you know he's fulfilling it if you don't go back and read the entire prophecy? You don't know. He could be lying. He could be lying. And that means you have been predisposed to believe that everything Jesus says is true without verifying it. That, to me, even back then, they didn't believe that. That's why they gave him a hard time. They had to keep inspecting him every day. They say, yo, let's see if this guy's really the Messiah. We don't really believe this guy. And they had to keep going back to the Old Testament. When Paul came to the Berean church, so to tell him something, they said, whoa, son, hold up. Let's look into the scriptures to see what you're saying is true. And Paul commended them. They didn't have no New Testament in their hands. When we had a situation where Philip met the Ethiopian eunuch, what book was he reading from? This is why when I talked to my brother Yeti, I started with Isaiah. Because when the eunuch was approached, he had the book of Isaiah open. He didn't have no New Testament. And they preached to him Yeshua from where? From the book of Isaiah. If you can't preach Yeshua from the book of Isaiah, then do you even really know what the gospel is? Because he didn't have the gospel back then. He didn't have the written epistles of Paul in his hands, because Paul wasn't even a apostle at that time. That's why I asked about, and I started with Mark 1, and I said, brother, if you was there during that time, can you tell me what Yeshua was talking about? And if he didn't know, which your brother says, well, I wouldn't really know unless A, B, and C. I said, you're right. you want it. So it's the same way that's why we have to understand the context where this message is being brought out from. And the more we understand the context, the better we can understand the gospel message. And that's why I want to say, sis, thank you for your time. I love you, Sister E. You are a wonderful person. You've been consistent from day one since I've met you. Your character is exemplary. And that's why I sent a lot of sisters to subscribe to your channel, because you exude the spirit in the things that you say, you know, even when it's rebuke necessary, you know, you do it. And this is me saying it for you because, you know, I've watched you grow, you know, over this period of time, and you're everything Yah intended for you to be. And you have much more to go. So I will continue to keep you in prayer. You know, I appreciate you helping me to build with you again and let people know that, you know, we're expanding, you know, as Israelites, we're going to different cities, different towns. We're bringing the gospel message, but also tell people how to practically solve problems. Look, the apostles had the gospel, right? Yep. But guess what happened? In Acts chapter 6, there was a dispute. Did they throw the gospel at it and say, wait, let's get the gospel. Let's throw the gospel at that dispute. Let's see what happens. No, they said, okay, look, we can't take our time away from fixing this problem. So we have to go look at men that are wealthy in the spirit, that have discernment, and we're going to assign deacons to oversee the daily distributions for the widows, the Jews, and the Gentiles. In Acts chapter 4, when the call out one started, they had to be autonomous. The scripture says, matter of fact, let me end off with this scripture, sis, because again, the gospel is good, but without a community, you can't really exemplify what the gospel is. You need a community. It's a body. That's why we call it ecclesia. That's not a physical church. Those are the called out ones. Acts chapter 4. And this is the last one I'm gonna end off with, sis, and I'm gonna get out your hair. Because I know I've been here for a while. So Acts chapter 4. Let me bring it up on my screen and I'm gonna show you guys. And again, this is why understanding culture is important, because it assists with the gospel. It doesn't override it. It assists with the gospel. Acts chapter 4, verse 32. If you can share my screen, sis, if you don't mind. All right.
I'm sharing it. Okay.
All the believers were of what? One heart and mind. No one claimed that any of their possessions was their own. I hear brothers preaching the gospel, but I said, yo, can this brother who don't have a car use your car to get to work since you ain't using it? Nah, why I gotta go to okay. But you Holy Spirit filled. You out here preaching the gospel, right? Okay, cool. Just checking. I just want to know. Just asking. But they shared what? Everything they had. No. They only shared their horses. No. They only shared some of their food. They shared everything. You show me a church that does this. Show me one church that do that. Or even one Israelite congregation that does this. I would love to see it. With great power, the apostles continue to testify to the resurrection of Adonai Yeshua. And the Most High's grace was so powerful at work in them all that what? Check it out. Look at the result of the gospel. This is how I know if somebody's preaching the real gospel. That there were no needy persons among them. Anybody can tell me they're preaching the gospel, but I'm gonna look for the needy people around you and say, wait, is there need? Oh, that person right there is in need. But you know the gospel? You know what the gospel also is? Feeding your brother and sister, clothing your brother and sister. Yeshua said to the disciples at that time, he says, what you do to the least of them, you've also done to me. That's the gospel. Salvation, you can't have salvation without a transformation of mind, heart, and spirit. If you're not taking care of those in your community, you ain't preaching the gospel. The gospel feeds, it clothes, it visits those that's in prison. That's what Yeshua said. I didn't write that. That's the gospel, because those are cultural things that they should have been doing already, but they were compromised because they were in captivity. Yeshua showed you how to walk it out while you're in captivity. And it says, to end it off, from time to time, those who own land or houses sold them, brought the money from the sales and put it at the apostles' feet. And it was what? Distributed to anyone who had need. You cannot preach a gospel message if there are needy people around you. So I don't want people to tell me nothing about no gospel, but yet I see everybody around them ain't eating. You the only one eating, they ain't eating. So what you gonna tell them? They ain't got enough faith? Is that because that's what preachers would say to me. I was struggling with finances. They said, you ain't got enough faith, young man. I said, wow, okay. Well, can you do this for me? Can you demonstrate to me what faith is without collecting tithes and offerings to pay your bills? Can you show me what faith is? No, that's not how it works. Oh, okay. Okay, I got you. I thought it just took a mustard seed, but maybe it took a little bit more than that. But anyway, thank you for your time, Sister E. I appreciate it.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for what you do with the community, teaching us how to become a community. And that's something we're still learning and we're growing together. So thanks again, Devon, for everything that you do. Hopefully I can have you back soon again for another bill like this. So family, I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have not, please subscribe to Divine Prospects YouTube page and his Patreon. He has a Patreon as well. It's Divine Prospect, isn't it correct? Or Kingdom? Okay, so under Divine Prospect. So please go and subscribe as well. And thank you again, everybody, for your support. And you have a good night.